to the Research-to-Practice Transit Symposium. Today is the third and final day. It's October 30th, 2025, and welcome to our symposium for today. We have a fantastic lineup, so we're going to start off today with a keynote address by Dr. Karen Philbrick from Mineta Transportation Institute, followed by a session on AI in transit. I know there's a lot of excitement about this, with Renee Autumn-Ray, Dr. Diego Silva, and Dr. Jacob Yan. There will be a session about green transportation in rural settings with Moses Stites, Jerome Curiazzi, Rachel Heckel, and Gloria Huerta. And we'll end up the day and the symposium with a panel discussion on automated transit shuttles. And that will be with Carol Schweiger, Angie Williams, and Dr. Prithvi Manjunatha. Thanks to our sponsors, Caltrans, or the California Department of Transportation, the UC Davis Transit Research Center, the American Public Transportation Association, or APTA, University of Florida Transportation Institute, or UFTI, the Mineta Transportation Institute, or MTI, and the Smarter Center. Thanks to our steering committee, with our steering committee members depicted here. We really appreciate all of the hard work by Andy Ferrillo, Art Gazzetti, Roderick Bailey, Greg Newmark, Jacob Yan, Tyler Monson, Keith Sirasak, Kerry Watkins, Alex Opulent, Suresh Ratnam, Shile Zhao, Hilary Nixon, Chad Riding, Joanna Shao, Brendan Hemley, John Ando, Mina Rezai, Connor Campbell, Kevin Spiker, and a special thanks to Caltrans employees Fahima Sheikh, Alicia Keith, Jane Fortes, and Caitlin Chansky. Thanks to today's participants. And for those of you who are a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, or AICP, there is certification maintenance credit available through the AICP website. You can go ahead and click on this event. So obviously you can't click on the screen, but this link is available on the symposium website for you to click on, and you can get credit for this event for certification maintenance. If there are any technical issues or you have any questions for the panelists, please feel free to send us an email at pm2.research@dot.ca.gov. Again, pm2.research@dot.ca.gov. So we are looking forward to hearing from Karen Philbrick today. We asked her here to speak to us because she feels a certain gap in what we've done for the past, this is our 6th year, and she feels an important gap in speaking to us today. The symposium of the past has focused a lot on the transit agencies, state departments of transportation, cities and how they approach transit. We focused a lot on individual researchers. We focused a lot on how those researchers, go about their projects, how they select their projects. One thing that we haven't had on this symposium that I can recall is someone speaking on behalf of a research institute. That's important because research institutes they deal a lot with funds, they deal with training, with, providing that link between what, the community needs and what professionals need and what the research community would like to see. So they're a very important role in this whole research to practice process. And Dr. Karen Philbrick is the executive director of the Mineta Transportation Institute at San Jose State University. Dr. Philbrick leads 2 competitively selected multi-university consortia, the California State University Transportation Consortium, which unifies the surface transportation research and workforce development efforts of the 23-campus California State University system, and the Climate Change and Extreme Events Training and Research Program funded by the Federal Railroad Administration. Prior to joining MTI, Dr. Philbrick shaped the field of transportation in a variety of roles, including as Assistant Director of the National Center for Intermodal Transportation at the University of Denver. She has been appointed 4 times by the U.S. Secretary of Transportation, Secretaries LaHood, Fox, Chow, and Buttigieg to sit on the US DOT Transit Advisory Committee for Safety, or TRACS, where she chaired the FTA administrator's tasking 14-02, which identified key elements of a safety management system approach to fatigue management. Dr. Philbrick has received many prestigious awards for her leadership, excellence, and outstanding contributions to her field. A select few include the CUTC Administrative Leadership Award, being named a Woman Who Moves the Nation by the Conference of Minority Transportation Officials, and one of the 100 Women of Influence in Silicon Valley by the Silicon Valley Business Journal, and recognition by the YWCA Silicon Valley with a Tribute to Women Award for her contributions to the field of transportation. She has a bachelor's degree from Fresno State University. Having grown up in Fresno, I actually have a brother who's graduating there in December. She has double master's from Columbia University and a PhD from the University of Denver. So we are very pleased to hear from Dr. Philbrick today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for that warm introduction, Chad. It's always a little embarrassing when somebody reads your bio because I'm just kind of silly and I'm just Karen. So it's such a pleasure to be with you today. And what a privilege to deliver the closing keynote address of this critically important 3-day event. I'm sure that all of the participants are walking away full of new content-rich lessons and actionable intelligence. And what a joy it is to now flip it around a little bit and talk to you all about leading a transportation center and how we work with our key stakeholders. So as Chad said, I'm Karen Philbrick, and I'm the Executive Director of the Mineta Transportation Institute. By way of background, we go by the acronym MTI, and we are focused on improving the mobility of people and goods. We've been in existence for over 30 years, funded by the University Transportation Center program offered through the U.S. Department of Transportation. We accomplish all of our goals through surface transportation research, education, technology transfer, and workforce development. And I'll delve a little deeper into each one of those. But before I talk more about the university and talk more about what we do, I want to tell you a little story about how I got into transportation. And the reason I like to start with telling this story is that all of you as professionals understand that one of the most critical issues we're facing at present is the lack of a qualified workforce and the shortage that's coming in the years ahead. One of the sponsors, the American Public Transportation Association, recently released a report that revealed that 43% of the current workforce in transit are 55 years and older. So we have an aging workforce. We are competing with all of the other exciting sectors. And part of our job is allowing people to see the rich, varied, and exciting opportunities in our sector. So let me back up a bit and talk to you about my background. As Chad mentioned, I have a bachelor's degree from Fresno State, go Dogs, and that is in psychology. And from there, I went on to earn a double master's degree at Columbia University, where I focused on organizational leadership as well as counseling psychology. From there, I entered a doctoral program in counseling psychology at the University of Denver. And the story I'm about to tell, some have heard, some might think I'm making it up, but it is the truth. On the very first day of my doctoral program, I was one of only 6 students accepted. You look around that room and you think, why me? Am I good enough? Should I be here? And I had a professor walk in, and he was disorganized and, kind of the classic professor you might envision in your mind. And he simply looked at the 6 of us and he said, who would like to earn extra money as a research assistant? And who would like to travel? I was the only one to raise my hand, and 2 weeks later, I found myself in steel-toed boots in the wee hours of the morning, collecting data on locomotive engineers and conductors at the CSX freight carrier, a Class 1 freight carrier in the United States. And I was looking at operator response to person under the train incidents, meaning grade crossing accidents or trespasser strikes. And I was there for 4 days, really working intently with the extra board and with all of the engineers, the conductors, the train masters, the yard masters. I really got a flavor for what that lifestyle was like and what some of the challenges were. And then I returned to Denver and I was doing an internship at Denver General Hospital, where I was seeing patients who were mentally ill and chemically addicted. And as I was doing that therapy, I heard the sound of a freight whistle. And I knew in that moment that I belonged in transportation because I could affect change on a much larger scale than I could doing individual therapy. And I changed the focus of my doctoral program, completely altered my career trajectory, and now I have spent every single day in transportation, and I am excited to be here. I fell into it and I fell in love. And I would hazard a guess that if we were all in the same room and I looked out at 500 of you and I asked how many people knew they wanted to be in transportation, that we would be shocked if more than 5 people raised their hand. So I tell that story to some of the emerging leaders who may be joining us today, and perhaps even students, with the lesson to be learned to say yes to opportunity. You never know where serendipity will take you. Had I not raised my hand, I would not be in transportation. So like many of you, I fell into it and I fell in love. And I stayed as an active researcher, really looking at trauma response. But then I delved into sleep-wake patterns in a 24/7 transport environment. So then I was a sleep doctor before I became an administrator here with the MTI team. So really exciting to be in transportation. I think many of you know that it's one of our nation's 16 critical infrastructures that, if harmed in some way, would have a deleterious impact on our nation's safety, security, and economic viability. But for me as a psychologist, I'm always considering what's the impact, what's the human-centered impact. And so when I think about transportation, I think about the lifelines it provides, the opportunities we give people to get to places of employment, to get to doctor's appointments, to get to those social activities that make our lives so rich and meaningful. And so we are researchers. So what do we know about loneliness and transportation? Something exciting, and I'll tell you. We know from research that people who are socially isolated can have physical health that's equivalent to those who smoke up to 15 cigarettes a day. Now, that is shocking, but what we know is some of the really negative impacts of loneliness and isolation include increased risk for heart disease, stroke, dementia, and type 2 diabetes. So when you all report to work every day, I hope you know you're providing life-saving and life-giving opportunity to everybody in our nation, and it's a privilege. So going back to the 4 pillars that we focus on at San Jose State University, which incidentally, in November of 2024, the Wall Street Journal named San Jose State University the #4 public university in the nation. And Money Magazine named us the #1 most transformative university in the nation. Why? We're just a state school after all. The answer is those ratings are based on graduation rates, loan repayment, and job placement. So we're getting the job done here at San Jose State, and we offer opportunities across the pipeline. So let's talk about the first pillar, and that's workforce development. We really need to be intentional about all of our efforts if we're going to solve this challenge. So if we are starting to talk about careers in transportation when somebody's already in high school or perhaps already in college, we are too late. We need to be having those conversations much earlier. If you stop and you ask the average person on the street to name a career in transportation, most can't name anything beyond bus driver, maybe airline pilot, maybe train operator. But what we know is there is a place for everybody, regardless of background. I've talked repeatedly about being a psychologist. On my team at the Mineta Transportation Institute, I have a journalist who's our editor and writer. I have an early childhood educator who makes sure that our project-based learning opportunities are aligned and age appropriate. I have a graphic designer to make sure that all of our promotional materials have a consistent branding, are engaging, and help make sure that we're moving all of our activities into practice, whether it's workforce development training or whether it's research. Then, of course, we've got the engineers and we've got the planners, but we need to start expanding the conversation of who is represented in transportation if we're going to have success in solving the shortage. It's not just for engineers or planners anymore. And so when we talk about workforce development at the Institute, we actually released curriculum for preschool students, talking 3 and 4-year-olds. In fact, we have a 42-second video on our website that would almost make you weep. It is so precious. So what did we do? We formed partnerships because at the basis of every success are those partnerships. They are critical, and I can't stress this enough. Partnering, communicating, having a reputation for excellence. That's what's going to take you across the finish line. So when we started talking about the need to have workforce development programs for our youngest cohorts, we went and we worked with some of our early childhood educators, and we developed age-appropriate activities. So, doing play gardens, finger painting, learning about transportation modes, if you will. We're not talking about careers yet. We're just introducing them to concepts. And what you see in that video I mentioned is this little girl. She's so cute, and she's being interviewed by her mom, and she's in her car seat, and they're on their way home, and she's talking about all of the things she learned. And one of my points of pride is she never mentioned the single occupancy vehicle. She talked about ferries, and she talked about trains, and she talked about buses. And so we're expanding that conversation. But then from there, we move on to elementary school. There we have poster contests, which allows children to respond to the theme that we have selected for that year using their artistic and creative skills. So for example, one year our theme was looking at grade crossing safety. Going back to that topic that got me into transportation, we actually partnered with the Union Pacific freight carrier and released a book called With Clifford the Big Red Dog. If any of you are parents, you know the big red dog I'm talking about. And it was talking about grade crossing safety. We went into the elementary schools with a focus on Title I schools. Title I means the preponderance of kids qualify for free or reduced lunch. We go into those schools. We read this book. We talk about safety in an age-appropriate way. And then we get our local transit provider, in this case, the Valley Transportation Authority, to donate light rail tickets. So the students can then go on a field trip and use their newfound safety skills to aboard the light rail system and to go to campus to be with San Jose State students and to learn a little bit more about our environment. But we don't just stop there. We want the students to learn about engineering concepts. So we recently held a bridge building contest with second grade students, and they were given uncooked spaghetti and told to build the strongest bridge they could. And the winning team built a bridge that held an 8-pound weight. That shows innovation at a very young age. And then from there, we have an essay contest, and that's for the older kids, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th to 12th, to talk about the same theme in an age-appropriate and persuasive way through the written format. Winners are selected, cash prizes are given, and we amplify this success through many different outlets, traditional media, as well as social media, and our newsletter. Now, this gets kids, again, excited about the topics. But then as kids age, their abilities expand. So in the middle school, we have the Garrett Morgan Sustainable Transportation Competition. And I'd like to give a shout out to Tyler Monson, who was mentioned in the beginning as somebody who really contributed to the success of this overall symposium. We work very closely with Tyler at the Institute, and he was actually championing a team in the Garrett Morgan competition when his child was in middle school. So Tyler, if you're watching, always great to see you. I love working with you through the years. You are responsible for helping us successfully move our research findings into practice, and we thank you. But that Garrett Morgan program, it is a legacy program, and it was founded in honor of Garrett Augustus Morgan, who is the son of formerly enslaved parents who went on to become a trailblazing inventor. In fact, he's best known for the modern three-way traffic signal, but he's also known for his work with the gas mask and the sewing machine. So this year, we have recruited 23 competing teams from across the nation. So teams, we had a team in Mississippi before, Maryland, for example, many teams from California, New Mexico, Washington, D.C. They work with mentors to develop a sustainable transportation project that they then submit to judges for evaluation. The winning team is actually brought to California to participate in our annual banquet and convocation celebration, where they join 300 of the leading Northern California transportation leaders, CEOs, elected officials, academics, practitioners, interested people to be celebrated for their sustainable transportation project. They also have the chance to go up on stage and to address that group of people. So starting that learning and engagement from a very young age. Finally, in high school, we have our Mineta Summer Transportation Academy, known as MISTA. This is designed for 30 competitively selected high school students to come onto campus. Again, we focus on Title I schools, where they spend 2 weeks in a non-residential program learning about careers in transportation and exciting concepts. So a variety of lectures as well as field trips, because kids that age, they can't sit in the classroom day after day. So we take them on a multitude of exciting opportunities. So when it comes to rail, we took them to the Central Valley to learn from the high-speed rail engineers and to tour the viaduct and the actual construction that's happening. We take them to San Francisco to Transbay Tower to learn about what technology is happening there. We've taken them to the Port of Oakland. We've taken them to the San Jose Mineta International Airport. You get the idea. We offer a broad range of opportunities for students to learn, but we realize that not everybody is destined to go to college. So we also have them job shadow mechanics from the Valley Transportation Authority. In this program, they have exposure from the front line to the C-suite, and it's an exciting first step. And we have evidence that some of our participants have actually gone on to focus on transportation in their scholastic endeavors and to join our ranks as people in transit agencies, at state DOTs, and at MPOs. So very exciting workforce development programs. Everything we offer, because we are funded through state and federal resources, is available on our website, free to use, implement, copy, download, have at it. It's the greatest form of flattery when people are using our work. And it also ensures that that hard work is being put into practice. Now, we know that some people are already in the workforce and they need to hone their skills, but they maybe don't want to go back for a master's degree. In that case, we offer leadership academies. Now we have everything from 2-day intensive academies to 3-year continuous engagement opportunities. We've delivered these at Metro North in New York City, in Denver at the Regional Transportation District, in Antioch, California at Tri-Delta Transit, here in Oakland at BART, prior to the pandemic, the 5th heaviest passenger rail system in the United States, as well as to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission in San Francisco. What makes our programs unique is, yes, we have subject matter experts talking about content, but more importantly, we're talking about impact skills. Some people may have heard these talked about like soft skills or emotional intelligence. Yes, all of those terms are applicable, but these are critically important and just as important as the technical matter expertise. Why? Because if you look at absenteeism and turnover, which is not only costly, but it disrupts the smooth and efficient flow of people and goods. If somebody lacks good supervisor support, the level of absenteeism increases. The greatest predictor of job turnover is lack of engagement and support in that relationship. And what we know is, just because people are promoted, it doesn't mean they're given the skills necessary to lead well or to know how to manage. So we give them a battery of psychological assessments that give people insight into how they relate to conflict, how they communicate, what role they perform in a team, all designed to help people evolve. And this is part of succession planning as we build that bench to address the shortage as people retire. Very exciting opportunities. That's workforce development. That's one of the pillars. The second pillar is education. This squarely falls into your university programs. So we offer, and this is a big shout out to Caltrans. Caltrans came to us many years ago and said, we've got a knowledge gap in our workforce that needs to be addressed. However, our workforce can't quit their jobs to go and attend a traditional program. Can you help us develop something? With that in mind, we developed the Masters of Science in Transportation Management program. It's known as the MBA for Transportation Professionals. It's offered through the College of Business, which is our academic home, which incidentally, our College of Business has AACSB accreditation, which only 5% of business schools achieve globally on an annual basis. This program is designed for a working professional to take one course per quarter and to earn their graduate degree in just over 2 years. Now wait for it, and I have a tiny drum roll here. As of today, the total cost for this master's program is a tick under $16,000, making it the most economically advantageous program in the nation. And it is exciting, and we have robust scholarships. So the first partnership you heard about with that was the partnership with Caltrans, which is why this program exists. Now, when we talk about moving research into practice and developing those partnerships for success, education matters. We move the research findings from our robust portfolio of research into the classroom to help students learn. But we also partner with industry and with associations because they are just as aware of the shortage as we are. So let me give you 3 brief examples. The American Public Transportation Foundation is the foundation arm of APTA. It's the scholarship arm that supports people at the undergraduate and graduate level earn their degrees so they can join our ranks. We partner with the foundation where they put up $5,000 and we put up $5,000, and one deserving student earns a $10,000 scholarship that pays for roughly 67% of their degree. This is designed to help people who might not have been able to take that next step see themselves earning that advanced degree. We've had this partnership for 7 years, and it's been a resounding success. In fact, our students have gone on to be so successful that in addition to that named scholarship, they're winning other scholarships as well. Now, in terms of partnering with industry, you all may have heard of HNTB, which is a leading consulting firm. They came to us after seeing me speak about workforce development and said, we want to partner. We want to help address this. What program can we customize or create together? So we sat and we listened. And there I'm going to stress the need to communicate again. Communicate, communicate, communicate. A part of communication is listening. So let me take a pause for a minute. How many of you have found yourself in a conversation with someone else and you know that their eyes have glassed over and they're simply waiting for your lips to stop moving so they can tell you what they've been rehearsing in their heads? It happens all too frequently. I urge you to stay in the moment, stay engaged, stay mindful of what the person's saying. And when you actively listen, you can paraphrase and give back to the person what you think you heard. That lets them know you were listening, you understood, and you're likely to take action. The more people feel heard, valued, and respected, the more likely they are to want to engage with you and to work with you. Communicate, communicate, communicate. So with this partnership with HNTB, they said, this is the kind of scholar we want to support. This is the amount of funding we have. What can we do? Well, we developed the Spark Scholarship with HNTB. It's in its 3rd year, and it's breaking down barriers, allowing people to get their advanced degree. We celebrate this partnership every June at our convocation celebration, which one of our points of pride for the master's program is the fact that we recently graduated in the same ceremony, the CEO of the Stanislaus Transit Agency, right next to a BART station agent. So you tell me, is this a program designed to lift all boats? The answer is yes. And what's also unique about this Caltrans relationship master's-driven program is the fact that half are taught by practitioners and half are taught by academics. That practitioner piece is so important because these are the people that are talking about boots on the ground experiences. This is Therese McMillan from the Obama administration, former chief planning officer for LA Metro, most recently the former executive director of the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. She taught our funding and finance class. We have someone from Caltrans teaching. We've got somebody from emerging technologies teaching, just making sure that there's that scholastic knowledge accompanied with the practitioner approach. Absolutely critical to success. That's the second pillar. That's education. In fact, we even go a step further because we want to always ensure that our curriculum is cutting edge. So we are overseen by a board of trustees, which is 25 of our nation's leaders. So the CEO of APTA sits on that board. The Secretary for Transportation for the state of California sits on that board. Multiple other individuals, and these are the leaders. These are people who show up. They are in that room. They guide our research portfolio. They contribute to our education programs. How? They're guest lecturers. They are available to help give feedback on capstone projects. They show up. They review the curriculum. They help us understand what's hot. What do we need to engage with more? What maybe should we think about focusing less on? A great example is the fact that we used to have a transportation security specialization certificate. Well, after working with industry partners, with modal administrators, and with our board of trustees, we realized that that needed to expand, that focus was far too narrow, and we needed to revisit it. We did. Now it's a certificate in safety, security, and emergency management. Think about that expansion. Incredibly important and makes it much more meaningful. And so that's the second part of the master's program. If somebody's not ready for a full master's degree, they can earn a certificate in high-speed and intercity passenger rail, or a certificate in safety, security, and emergency management, or general transportation management. But all of that is predicated on partnerships. And that moves us into our third pillar, and that's technology transfer. If you do research and it only sits on a shelf, it doesn't matter. You've got to make sure that the results are reaching those responsible for implementing change. And guess what? Those responsible for implementing change are busy. They don't want to read a 300-page report. I think we all know this. So part of our technology transfer component is making sure that we digest our research down into a research brief, which is a one-page, double-sided document that accompanies every single research project, and it gives the highlights. Here's the title. What was the burning question? What was the outcome? What's the key takeaway? This is designed so the busy professional gets the key points they need and can dig deeper if they need to. But this should never be overlooked. A research brief is a must, and it's part of technology transfer as it accompanies research. But then we go a step further, and I'll talk about partnerships and moving research into practice in this area as well. We founded what's called a Research Snaps webinar series. This is unique, and it's designed to be delivered in just 30 minutes. So 15 minutes of content from the expert, 15 minutes of moderated Q&A from the audience. People who participate are eligible for continuing education units, but importantly, they're getting straight from the research. This is the heavy-hitting research. This is what's happening, and this is what can be done. We've experienced tremendous success with this program because what we see again and again is people are saturated. Their attention spans are limited. They don't want to sit and listen for 60 minutes straight, which incidentally, I'm very aware that I've been talking for 29 minutes. So Chad, I'm watching this. Don't think I'm losing track of time here. But in terms of that technology transfer piece and the webinar series, we recently did a series focused on high-speed rail. Now, some of you may have heard of this project. Some of you who may not be located in California may think the project is not continuing. I assure you, this project is continuing. It has full environmental clearance from bookend to bookend. There are 174 miles under construction. There are over 15,000 people put to work on this project. In fact, in this Central Valley, before this project commenced, the unemployment rate hovered around 25%. Now it's in the single digits, in large part thanks to this infrastructure project and all of the jobs that it's created. So we partnered with the California High-Speed Rail Authority on a release of our webinar series, took a look at lessons learned from around the globe. So lessons from Spain, we've got Japan in development, from France, from German. But then we said, California High-Speed Rail Authority is not the only other high-speed rail provider. So then we went back to APTA. APTA is a terrific partner, and Art Gazzetti is a dream to work with. If you haven't had the pleasure, I highly recommend seeking out opportunities to do so. I'm a director for the High Speed and Intercity Passenger Rail Committee of APTA. They co-sponsored, as did the High Speed Rail Alliance and the U.S. High Speed Rail Association. We came to them with this opportunity. It's no cost, not much effort on their part, but high impact. And it behooves us to have these partnerships too, because then they help promote the opportunities as well, really expanding and broadening our reach and our impact. But all of those relationships, again, are based on communication and a history of success in delivering programs of quality. The fourth pillar is research, and we talk about research. Obviously, it's critically important that you have the expertise, but it's also important that you have the relationships. Relationships are so important for making sure the research gets out there. So three of our best practices for turning research into practice. The first question we always ask is, to what end? Begin with the user in mind. Who is this for and how will it make the world better? And we don't just fund research to fund research for research's sake. At the Institute, we have a highly sophisticated research needs assessment process. This means we go out to modal administrators. We go out to Caltrans. We go to CalSTA, which is a state transportation agency. We go to leading CEOs. We go to our board of trustees, and we seek out their high priority needs. All we ask for is a simple paragraph. We then, as a first step, because we are good stewards of taxpayer dollars, we looked at the Transportation Research Board TRID database to see what research is in process or has already been published, if any at all. If we find that research has already been published, we will spend time creating a briefing memo for the person who requested the research. We always close the loop. Part of building your reputation of excellence is closing the loop with your communication. Yes, we heard you. We're good stewards of taxpayer dollars. We found there's already research. Here's a summary memo. How else can we help? That's option one. If we find that there has not been research, we digest that need into our competitive request for proposals. We issue a competitive RFP once per year. We have an external advisory committee that selects all of the final research projects. It is critically important that my team have a hands-off approach to this. You can never let your objectivity be called into question. No hands on research selection. But because quality is so critically important, before any of the proposals reach the final review and selection committee, 2 to 3 subject matter experts review every proposal and rank them. We want to make sure we're doing high quality, solid work that's going to create change. Now, when we put a research need into our competitive RFP, this is not a guarantee of funding. This is a guarantee of opportunity for the need to be responded to. Very important. So with that in mind, to what end will it make the world better? Who is this need for? And then whoever submitted the need, we ask them to help review the proposals that are submitted in response to ensure the proposal selected, if selected, is aligned with their need. Then they serve on an advisory board to make sure that the research is progressing as it should and in line with the outcome goals. Very important. The second part of moving research into practice is the trust building and the reciprocity. Being good partners, being good stakeholders. Again, all based on communication, closing that loop, making sure you show up. I can't stress this enough. Part of the success we have at the Institute, and let me highlight a tremendous success that we got this year. We received the 2025 Research Program of the Year Award from the California Transportation Foundation for our California State University Transportation Consortium and all of the meaningful work that we produce. A big shout out to Dr. Hillary Nixon, who is the most phenomenal person I've ever worked with in my life. Art and Tyler are wonderful. Everybody needs a Hillary Nixon in their world. Why am I saying this? Because part of building a successful team is making sure you hire people who can fill in your weaknesses and you hire people you work well with. That makes the system move effectively every step of the way. We trust one another. When we show up again and again, people from Caltrain, Caltrans, BART, beyond the boundaries of California, know our names, know our quality. And when a research need comes into mind or a workforce development need arises, they think Mineta. Why? Because we show up and we show up with excellence. So say yes to opportunity to serve on boards and to serve on committees. Because when you start to serve and you start to show that you deliver, that you say yes, and that you close the loop, people feel more allegiant to you. They want to work with you. And when they have opportunities, they come to you. We recently received a cooperative agreement because of all of the speaking on workforce development that my team does. The Federal Transit Administration saw this, and when they realized that they had an opportunity for a cooperative agreement, they came to the Institute. This was in the absence of a competition. This was based on that history of success and delivery. The third part is storytelling. You can't just do your research and let it sit on a shelf. A story has to accompany it. A traditional media release, we do that through media advisories so that, Mercury News, KTVU, Politico, people like that pick it up. But then we also do a broad social media strategy. Very important if you're going to reach generations across the lifespan as you're moving your research into practice. I have many, many examples of success in moving research into practice. I will simply share two, one of which is based on California Senate Bill 1, which is better known as the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017. This legislation was authored by then Senator Bell, who was the chair of the Housing and Transportation Committee for the California Senate. In this legislation, he authored a line item that provided research at the California State University level at $2 million annually and at the UC level at $5 million annually, because he realized how important it was to align research with dollars and with impact. Now, why am I telling you about this? Because at the Institute, we have issued 15 years of a trend analysis of how Americans feel about transportation taxes and fees. What we find from the results is if you are specific, you can get a supermajority support for a tax increase. So what do I mean by that? You can't just say, would you support a tax increase? But if you say, would you support a tax increase to improve safety in your area by doing X, Y, Z, that increases the support. Senator Bell used the findings to craft the language of the SB1 legislation that was successfully passed. We love that example. The other one, and this is based on research published in the year 2012, we developed a bicycle level of traffic stress methodology. Low stress bicycle methodology, LTS. This is likely our most successful research project in the 30-year history of our institute. It continues to show up in our top 5 downloads, and it has been called I'm going to read this, it's so important. This is a quote. The mantle of industry best practices for assessing the comfort and connectivity of bicycle networks. Basically, we want an 80-year-old grandfather to ride comfortably next to the 8-year-old grandchild. That's what the LTS is for. So the cities that have adopted this framework, Fort Worth, Texas, Los Angeles, California, Montgomery County, Maryland, Seattle, Washington. Statewide, the entire state of Delaware. You go internationally, Ontario, Canada, Ottawa, even in Australia. So we track impact and we do it through several sources. We have people report back to us. We make sure that we reach out to people who requested research. We also monitor all of the times our name appears in the media, and we post those articles on our website. So for example, there might be over 1,000 articles that mention our researchers in any given year. Popular media drives traffic to the website, which drives traffic to the research. We also make sure that we are always available to provide technical advice, to give congressional briefings, and to deliver congressional testimony. My partners at Valley Transportation Authority, they had some questions about change management. Who do they think of? Who do they call first? They come to the Mineta team. Our mayor, Mayor Mahan of the very large city of San Jose, needed some help thinking about mobility. He came to the Mineta team to be part of his mobility kitchen cabinet, if you will, showing up, communicating, delivering with excellence. These are all keys to moving research into practice. And with that, I will simply close my remarks. I think I have droned on enough, and your attention spans might be waning a little bit. So I thank you for your attention. I don't think there's anything more exciting than transportation, and I'm grateful to each of you every day for your work in helping to keep our nation moving. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Dr. Philbrick, for your fantastic presentation. Riveting, lots of interesting things going on. You know, I've been at Caltrans for 16 and a half years, and I've kind of always kept an eye on the Mineta Institute, been in the presentations about the degrees, but this was very informative to see all the things that the Mineta Institute does that I was not aware of. You know,
Yay, I'm excited. Thank you for that.
yeah, so I think there are lots of really interesting questions, and I know our time is limited. Um, so one question that really stood out was talking about storytelling
Mhm.
and, you know, communicating with the public about the research. And that is something that is very difficult for many researchers to do and practitioners to do for any kind of, you know, program is how do we get the message out and how do we tell a story? So I guess my question for you is,
Mhm.
how do we tell clear and compelling stories of complicated research or transportation programs? How do we tell a story that is coherent and compelling?
I love this question, and I love people. So this is right up my alley. You've got to make it compelling, and you've got to make it people-centered. I love data, but I remember data related to people, data related to experiences that I've had. So putting a face to it. So let's talk about autonomous vehicles. There's a lot of information out there. People are being inundated. Some people are scared, some people are excited. How did we put a face to the research we do on autonomous vehicles? We did it with my dad. Okay. My dad is 83 years old. He's my human. He's my favorite person. My husband and daughter can't hear me right now, but oh, he's mine. So we went to San Francisco, and my 83-year-old father downloaded his own app, created an account, and took his first fully autonomous vehicle ride through the streets of San Francisco. We published a blog on it with a picture of him and a quote saying it was easy peasy. Easy peasy is a very 80-year-old kind of thing to say, but the beauty of it, the beauty of that was it drove people to autonomous vehicle research, but more importantly, that human component. I had a woman reach out to me who saw that blog in tears. And she said to me, we've had to take my dad's car keys away, and he is suffering tremendously from losing his identity, his lack of independence. Autonomous vehicles, it never occurred to me that this could be a tool in his mobility toolkit. That's how you start doing the storytelling. Attach a face, attach a name, attach an emotion. The 42-second video of the preschooler talking about transportation, I guarantee you people are going to remember that. Infographics. Infographics are terrific for storytelling. When we talk about leadership and succession planning and workforce development, we do a series called the Mineta Leadership Fellows Series, where we interview leading CEOs or even the Caltrans director about how they lead through different challenges. You break that down into 2 to 3 minute segments, again, to address people's short attention spans, and you push that out through social media, through infographics, through newsletters, through a multitude of outlets. You've got to have many, many strategies in your toolkit because an 18-year-old relates to information very differently than an 80-year-old. And everybody needs to be communicated with. One final example of this, we need to break down barriers. So when we were doing research on transit harassment, for example, and assault, we worked with community groups to translate our survey into 14 different languages to make sure that every voice had an equal opportunity to be heard. And we used different ways of reaching those respondents in an appropriate way and through storytelling. Make it personal.
Absolutely. And I know you have to you leave. Thank you so much, Dr. Philbrick, for coming to speak to us today. Fascinating discussion. Really appreciate all of the insight that you gave, especially the work that you're doing to really build those bridges between San Jose State University, the Mineta Transportation Institute, and all of the practitioners there are, and really focusing on making the MTI program kind of a linchpin between all kind of sides of the transportation industry. So fantastic. Really very much appreciate it.
Yes, and Chad, may I close with 2 thoughts?
Absolutely.
Okay, I started by saying I'm a psychologist, so I just want to leave people with a few thoughts. I'm always nervous before I give any speech. Always. It's part of my process. And so when I told Chad this when we first got connected, he mentioned he was a little surprised. Now, I want to treat you guys to 3 different things right now. The first is the same neural pathways in your brain that govern anxiety govern excitement. So when you feel those butterflies, the narrative that you weave in your brain impacts performance. So when I feel those butterflies, I think I get to address people who don't know anything about the Institute or about my passion and talk about workforce development. This is going to be great. I'm so excited. That produces one performance. The other one could be, oh my God, I'm going to fail. I'm going to stink. Nobody's going to like what I say. Nobody's going to listen. That has a very different impact. So I guess my takeaway there is be kind to yourself and make sure that the cognitive framework in the story you're telling yourself leads to success. Self-talk matters. The second one is I mentioned that I focused on sleep when I started out as a researcher. Sleep is as critically important to emotional and mental well-being and physical health as exercise. It should not be compromised. The key is 7 to 9 hours in a 24-hour period. Naps help. If you're ever really tired, drink a cup of coffee, immediately take a nap. When you get up 30 minutes later, you're refreshed from sleep and you're refreshed from coffee hitting your system. The third and final note is what we do matters and our mental health matters. In transportation, particularly in construction, we have one of the highest suicide rates that there is across the board. Pay attention to yourself, pay attention to others, communicate with authenticity, and thank you again for the opportunity.
And fantastic words to live by. Thank you so much, Dr. Philbrick. Really appreciate all the work you do at the Mineta Transportation Institute.
Thank you.
So we are going to go on a 15-minute break. So when we come back, we will have a fascinating session about AI in transit. So let me go ahead and share the screen. So excellent.
Very cool.
Thank you, and we'll see you in 15 minutes.
Good day, everyone, and welcome to our panel on AI in transit. I'm Mineta and I'll be facilitating today's discussion. I'm really excited to have with us three distinguished experts whose work sits at the intersection of artificial intelligence, data science, and transportation innovation. We have today Rennie Autumn-Ray, who is the Senior Director of Strategic Growth at Hayden AI, has over 15 years of experience in transportation technology and policy across all levels of government. She recently published a report, Understanding AI and Transportation with the Inno Center, and holds a master's degree in urban planning from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Then we have Dr. Diego Silva, who is a postdoctoral fellow associated with the Transit Analytics Lab at the University of Toronto. He received a PhD in computer science, and his work addresses using computational science to enhance public transportation planning and operations. Dr. Silva has a diverse professional history in the private sector and experience in data architecture, systems design, and project management in a variety of industry sectors. And then we have Dr. Jacob Bion, who is an assistant professor of civil engineering at the University of Florida, focuses on using data science and AI to create more equitable and sustainable transportation system. His interdisciplinary research bridges transportation engineering, data science, and urban planning, collaborating with public agencies and industry to develop intelligent tools for improving transit planning and mobility management. So we start with Rennie's presentation, which is about better bus services, which describes how transit agencies are improving on-time performance and accessibility, reducing crashes, and through the use of AI-powered traffic enforcement cameras on buses. So, Rennie, please start.
Yep, great. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm excited to be here and be part of this TRB virtual symposium. So can everybody see my screen? Mina, does it look right?
It does look right, yeah.
Perfect. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I think one of the easiest ways to try to understand artificial intelligence is by looking at a specific application of it and sort of understanding how different AI methods can combine to do something actually useful and solve a problem. So I'm going to give an example of basically how transit agencies leverage AI tools supplied by Hayden to help improve safety, operations, and accessibility. So I'm going to quickly go through this, but basically say we're a 6-year-old company based out of San Francisco and under contract with a number of large transit agencies across the US. And so for those on the call who either work for a transit agency or ride transit, I think you understand the challenges when buses are unable to safely pull up to a bus stop or to effectively use bus lanes because they're blocked with illegally parked vehicles. I think one of the other things that you might understand is that it's not really a problem that can be solved by people at scale. So obviously, cities have parking enforcement officers, they have transit police, but to look at the hundreds of miles and thousands of bus stops that the average city has, it's not a problem that is effectively and efficiently solved by asking people to kind of go out and handle this work. So basically what Hayden AI has done is combine a number of different artificial intelligence tools to apply them to the issue of traffic enforcement as a way to help change motorist behavior and clear up bus lanes, bike lanes, and bus stops, and get folks moving again, whether they're cyclists or, in the instance we're talking about, bus operators and transit riders. So that's the kind of basic context of how we operate. So let me talk to you a little bit about what our technology is and how transit agencies are using it. So what we do is take a couple of different cameras. We have something called a context camera that looks at multiple lanes of travel lanes on a public street. We also have what's called an automated license plate recognition camera, and that's something that can take a very clear image of a license plate. And so we combine those two cameras with a compute box that's powered with NVIDIA chips that can actually do what's called processing on the edge. And we also have an antenna so that we can constantly confirm the location of where a bus is as it's traveling down its route. And I think one of the things that's helpful to understand about transportation is a lot of times when we're talking about data collection and data analytics, in order to gather the data, oftentimes you need a piece of hardware. You know, sometimes the hardware can be an individual smartphone or connected vehicle technology, but oftentimes when you're talking about a bus and transit operations, a lot of the data collection comes from a piece of hardware itself. So if you think of the average bus, you're going to have CAD AVL equipment. You're going to have all kinds of different cameras that are monitoring both inside and out of the bus. And you're going to have all of the software tools that the operator is using to drive the bus. And so we're another piece of hardware that's part of this bus and that's gathering that information. And I think what's really useful about what we do, and folks who work with data analytics will probably understand, there are already tremendous amounts of data. And so just being able to collect data isn't necessarily very valuable because you can easily get overwhelmed with data that isn't useful, that isn't accurate, or that needs so much cleaning that it's just not actually something that's relevant or helpful for someone on the back end who's trying to analyze that data. So the benefit of having this compute box on the vehicle is that a bus may be out in service for 8, 12, even 14 hours a day, but very little of the information is actually useful when we're talking about traffic enforcement because there may be, 10 or 50 or 100 times when a bus is traveling and it sees something that it's a potential traffic enforcement. So that's where some of the tools like convolutional neural networks, which are deep learning methods that enable analysis of visual data in near real time, is helpful. That's where computer vision that's applied with the context camera can be helpful. And then, of course, there are things like machine learning and simultaneous location and mapping tools. And so dozens or even hundreds of these artificial intelligence methods are combined with this piece of technology so that what is actually captured and shared with the transit agency is very accurate data and very high quality. So I mentioned a little bit about what some of those methods are, and I think that's also one of the things that's most helpful to understand about artificial intelligence is that usually we're talking about a large quantity of different methods in a technology stack, which are all applied often simultaneously, sometimes longitudinally, but that these can be very complicated solutions, but sometimes breaking them down into those individual components like computer vision versus a convolutional neural network can be a helpful way of breaking down what the technology is and how it's used. So I've talked about that a little bit. And what I'm going to show you now is an example of what the computers see as a bus is traveling down the street. So this shows you raw footage here on the lower left of what you might see from the camera angle where, for instance, here you've got an example where a delivery vehicle is parked in the bus lane, but you can also see in the larger, more animated video all of the different objects that the compute box is identifying in real time to understand not just the presence of a UPS truck, but is this a dedicated bus lane? Are there business rules from a transit agency demonstrating that the truck that's visible in this video is actually something that is useful? It's in the right location. It's in the correct time of day to be a potential traffic violation. And so this just gives you a little bit of a glance of some of the complexity of video that is being ingested into the compute box, analyzed in real time, so that only a small amount of that information is shared through the cloud. I talked a little bit about our hardware. This is what it looks like. This shows you what you might see if you were someone who worked for that transit agency or a parking violations processor. Gives you additional information such as a license plate and the specific location of the vehicle. And then, of course, this is probably more relevant to folks who show up at a TRB conference. These would be some of the analyses that you can perform when you have data aggregated over time. So you start to be able to gather enough data to see patterns, whether they're map-based in a heat map that you see here on the right, or whether you're just looking for performance over time and data trends over time. And just as an example, with a customer that we've been working with the longest, since New York instituted a traffic enforcement program several years ago, they've been able to see an increase in the bus speeds as motorists change behavior, actually a reduction in collision because operators are weaving in and out of traffic less frequently. And from an accessibility standpoint, 40% reduction in blocked bus stops. And that's because motorist behavior is changing as this program has been in effect. So I hope that was a helpful example, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with everyone today.
Thank you, Renee. It was really good. It was very inspiring. We will have the questions at the end of the presentation. But now I invite Diego for reviewing the work at the University of Toronto Transportation Lab. Please, Diego.
Can you see my screen?
I can see your screen. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me. So I will talk about the research at the Transit Analytics Lab at the University of Toronto. So I will describe a bit of the motivation in AI and also like some background, the framework for AI applications, and the three categories of AI research in our lab: prescriptive, predictive, and generative AI. Some concluding thoughts and some reminders. Okay. So let's jump into the first slide here. So transit agencies have been really swimming in transit data for so long. And for example, AVL data, ABC, AFC, all those acronyms that we already know, household service, rider satisfaction service. So these are some of the examples of data that the transit agencies they have. But sometimes when they approach us, they ask like, what we can do with this? Yeah, because sometimes we don't know what to do with this amount of data. And many transit agencies that have already built solutions, sometimes we already know that there is still room for more data analytics research. And now with the increasing number of AI methods and tools, and knowing that the fuel of those engines is basically data, then we have this potential to uncover patterns in the data that previously was really hard to understand. So some of the examples, and I think this is the benefit of AI because we have multiple flavors. So predict patterns, generate content, enable working with unstructured data, time series, graphic structure. So there is much power on AI that we can leverage the opportunities of research and also application. So the way that we, as I said, we categorize our research is in generative AI, predictive AI, prescriptive AI. But this is not the only way to divide this work. I like this example here of Professor Powell from the Princeton University, where he divides into two categories. So we have making computers behave like humans, so before 2020, and then after 2020, making computers smarter than humans. So I think these two categories encompass most of the directions that AI is leading now. And I think I also suggest here read the page so you can have more idea. But when we see all those acronyms and techniques, how can we translate this into actions? How can we translate this into development? And we have this pipeline. Probably this is not something that is brand new. Everyone knows that we need to start from the data, and then we have an interface, orchestration, model, and then the output. So basically what I'm going to do here is to connect the three categories that we have and build the how can we connect this to the solutions that we have been developing our research. Okay, so let's start with this prescriptive framework. So the prescriptive framework, following these 5 steps, we start with an interactive environment. In this case, we are using the reinforcement learning as an example. And then we build the environment, and then we need to build like the observation builder, reward shaping, wrappers, buffer, offline loader, and seeding. We have the third step, which is the orchestration of the reinforcement learning. This is the training loop, the PPO, the DQN. So these are some of the methods, the exploration, curriculum, evaluator, episodes, and checkpoints. The policy and value network, which is the model that we need to select, and the policy and value networks, optional award models or inference policy, and the last step, which is the actions and policy that the agent will make decisions. So these are some of the examples. And this is the research that we developed some years ago, is the AI-driven TSP, which is the traffic signal priority. The whole goal here is to design an environment that can learn decisions to control the traffic signals. So we start from here, from the environment. We designed this using MSUM. There are many options, Sumo and PTV, VSUM. So these are some of the examples that we can simulate the environment. Then we have the actions that the agent needs to decide based on some reward function, and then the states that will come from the environment. And then we train this model millions of times until the agent learns how to make an optimal decision on this. So this solution was to overcome the limited and mixed effect on transit reliability, because we already know the benefits of traffic signal priority. But this opens the opportunity to understand how is the impact on reliability as well. So that's why this work trying to understand the headway regularity. And we got very good results. And this work also, we extend this to multiple intersection and coordinate traffic signals. And the most recent work is how to combine all this environment, the traffic coordination, multiple intersection, and dynamic bus lane. So this is some of the work. I will share later the reference, and then you can trace the papers. The second one is the predictive framework. So the predictive framework, we start with labeled data. Yeah, so for example, APC, GTFS, AVL, real time or static, and then we have weather, some APIs, events that we can collect. And then we send this to pre-processing data loader. So this is the second step. The third step is train, validation, and test. Yeah, so this is when we decide and split the data and how to define some, like for example, early stopping or distribution of the training, and also the optimizer. And the fourth step is the model. And as the previous presentation, we have a zoo of options. In this case, LSTM, GNN, convolutional neural networks, hybrid deep learning architecture. And the predictions, we have some options here that we have been developing in our group. So for example, electric vehicles consumption, anomaly prediction, and ridership prediction. So we'll talk about the IROAM, which is a work developed by Jihao Wang, which is one of our PhD students. And this work here is to detect anomalies from AVL, GTFS, and APC. So the whole idea here is to categorize those data into idling criteria, overcrowding, and bunching, and populate a data set that will generate these visualizations here on the right. So this is just one example of videos of the prototyping of this tool. So this is, I think, the cool idea is how we transform research into something meaningful and tangible. So we have here in this example how to track the buses and the classification at the same time. So idling, bunching, and overcapacity. Another example of this is the Trolley bus. This is a tool that we developed I think we launched this year. And this idea here is to predict the energy consumption of the buses. We already know that the replacement factor is not 1-to-1, yeah, when we replace diesel by electric buses, but how to account for all the factors that influence the battery depletion. So we developed this model based on a task that was carried out here in Toronto. And this too is considering all the factors that are relevant when you need to make a decision to replace the fleet. And then we built this web tool that is available in this website here on the bottom. So you can test and see how your diesel fleet will be, what is the replacement factor of your route. So for example, right now the tool is just for one route, but the idea is to expand this to multiple routes and then calculate the net energy consumption and the replacement factor. Another example here that we have is the use of Wi-Fi data and machine learning. So we collect the data from devices and the subway network here in Toronto. And then we build a homogeneous static graph. And we have these multiple states. And then the idea is to predict the passenger flow of the whole subway network. We know that time series methods based on, for example, RIMA, SRIMA, they have some limitations. And with graph neural networks and some other AI methods, we can encode not only the temporal events, but also the spatial, and then encode this into the graph and run those methods. On the right, we have the DST Transit Net that was developed by one of our students as well. So this is the pipeline that we encode the spatial temporal correlations and graph attention mechanism to focus on the main nodes to predict the state of the graph and the next step. So these are some examples for the predictive analysis that we have been developing in our group. And then we have the last one that is the generative AI. So this is the new thing. Everyone wants to know how to implement this new technology. But again, the pipeline, the research pipeline is almost the same. So we start with the knowledge and tools to incorporate the docs, tweets, social network interactions to a vector database or APIs. And then we build all this data collectors here to really build this knowledge graph. And then we have the second step, which is the embedding that will follow the ingestion, chunking, embedding, indexing, retriever, re-ranker. There are many techniques that we can use and this second step here, which is the data interface. And then we have the orchestration, which is really the hard part when we were working with large language models. So how we will build the link, the agent and the graph routing. So there are many tools, like for example, length graph, the RAG flow, which is the retrieval augmented generation, retrieve, rank, compose, tool calling. There are many options. And then we have the base large language models that This is a decision that you need to consider. Always focus on optimize reliability and the quality of the answers, cost, yeah, which is really important, and the latency that will define the quality of your solution as well. And then we have the responses and some examples here, the Transit Talk, the Transit Pulse, and ELSA. I will select ELSA to talk and how this solution was designed in our group here. So ELSA comes from experience learning-based system for supervisor assistance. So the idea here is to collect data from the reports, incident reports, and we use this as an example here, the TTC incident reports. And most of those reports, they are physical form. So the supervisor is there writing, like handwriting the incident and the solutions and what happened. And sometimes we think that this kind of media is really hard to extract the data, but with large language models now I will not say that it's easy. And this is what we did. So we trained the model on top of these reports, plus the policy, the standards that the recommendations that the transit agency has. And then we have these two pipelines, one with the policy and another one that was the decisions that were made in the past, like historical decisions. And then this will help and guide the decisions for the supervisor based on the past, plus the recommendation, the policy recommendation. So this is an example how we build the model. As you can see, this is a simple graph that we can track. So we will report here what is the incident that happened, and then the model will track the solution and then see what are the options that they can recommend. So for example, the policy point of view and the historical decisions made in the past. I will accelerate here a little bit so you can see the solutions, and then we can track all the steps that the agent made, and then we can also interact with the agents to make the response even better. Okay. So basically, these are some of the research that we have been developing in our lab. Of course, AI will unlock a huge opportunity for the transit agencies. But also, I think what we have right now is the chance to prototype fast the research and also communicate effectively with the transportation industry. So we can build this bridge together and understand how the demands from the industry and also the research can work together, and also prototype and build up like this kind of tools that will help the next generation of solutions in transportation. So just a few reminders. So social media, please. We have to LinkedIn, YouTube, all the documentations and presentations you can see there. I don't know, but Transit Data 2026 is coming here in Toronto next year. So please submit your abstract. This is the website, and these are the references of my presentation. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Diego, for this very insightful presentation. We go to the last but not least presentation by Dr. Yan, which is a study about developing automated low-cost method using Google Street View images and deep learning and to assess bus stop amenities like shelter and benches. The approach, which is based on a YOLO version B model, proves accurate and adaptable to different cities with minimal local data fine-tuning. Jacob, please. I think you're muted, Jacob.
Sorry. Thanks, Mina, for the introduction, and very glad to be here today to present our work to the R2P Transit Symposium audience today. So the work I'm going to show is using computer vision and Google Street View images to automate the bus stop amenity assessment process. The background for this work is that we know bus stop is the initial point of contact between riders and a transit system. It's kind of the door you show to non-users as well. So the amenities available at bus stops, they really shape the perceptions of bus system. They shape customer experience and ridership. But across the US communities, a lot of transit agencies don't have good data on bus stop amenities. Either they don't have a list of their amenities at all, or the data are incomplete. So previously, to solve this issue, there has been some notable efforts. I will talk about two quickly. One is the 2020 bus stop census done by Mata Army, which is an advocacy group in Atlanta. So they partnered with a lot of organizations, and they do this census through crowdsourcing with volunteers. It was a nearly year-long effort, surveyed 32,000 each Mata stops in Atlanta. So what they did there was, you see like volunteers going to the field, taking a piece of paper, record the amenities available or unavailable at the bus stop. And to coordinate effort, they also develop a web app where others can see if a bus stop has been surveyed or not. So this is one large-scale effort. Another notable effort was done by Marcel Moran, who did a presentation with the R2P Symposium 2 or 3 years ago. Actually, much of the idea I have today was inspired by his work. So what he did was he rode his bike to go through every single bus stop in San Francisco, and then record similar items to the Mata Army list of bus stop amenity types. So if you guys are interested, you can watch the video recording or read his paper. And because of the notable effort that required to develop this database, what we had in mind was basically, since we collect data by looking at if the bus stop has the amenity we care about or not, we could potentially train a computer vision model to help us see, instead of going to the field to collect such information, which takes a lot of manual resources. We thought maybe we can just leverage Google Maps Street View images and then develop the database from there. So here you may think about two mechanisms. One is we have a list of bus stop locations, and then somebody sitting in front of the computer to do this work. Or we can try to automate the whole process. So our goal is trying to automate everything, because even if you have somebody sitting in front of the PC, it's a boring task. So let's see if computers can handle the task. And we thought about the data available there to do this task. One data set that's required is the bus stop location information that we can extract from GTFS. The other is we can leverage the Google Street View API to get many Google Street View images at once. Like for each bus stop, imagine we get like 4-ish images to get a good view of the bus stop, to comprehensively capture the bus stop. And then the Google Street View image API is relatively cheap. And if the scale of the images is not too large, it can be free. So based on these two data sets, here is the initial idea we had and the envisioned technical steps. The first step is for each bus stop, we snap the bus stop location to the street center line. And then based on that observation point, we can obtain panoramic images based on Google Street View image. Like I said, we want to capture more than one image to get a good view of the bus stop. And because the distance from the Street View center line to the bus stop can differ, so we need to adjust the field of view a bit based on the calculated distance. So first step is obtaining the Street View images. Second step is we know like the image resolution sometimes can be somewhat low, so we can use off-the-shelf model to enhance the resolution. And finally, let's apply object detection algorithms to detect the amenity type we care about. So that's the envisioned technical step. But in real life, often things don't go as you hope for. So there are actually many challenges we need to overcome. The first challenge was the GTFS data we got from transit agencies. We realized actually sometimes the bus stop location can be inaccurate. It can be like 100 feet away from the location recorded in the data set, or even a little bit more far away from that. Or in some cases, we realized that the Google Street View image can have low resolution. Even if we enhance the resolution using a computer vision algorithm, that still don't help. And in other cases, there could be like object abstraction. Like this is an example of low image resolution. And then this is an example where the bus stop is actually next to the location provided to us, or you see trees standing in the way of the viewpoint, or sometimes it's large vehicles like this trash truck. So we need to figure out different solutions for these issues that we are dealing with. We mainly thought about three things to do here. The first thing is when the location being provided, the bus stop location is not exactly the location recorded in the database, we then try to look not only at the point, the bus stop location provided to us, but also to adjacent locations. And this is an example, like we look further away from the GTFS bus stop location. But in these cases, the bus stop is pretty far. So we end up needing to do something called divide and enlarge. We divide the picture into two and then enlarge it so that we can see the bus stop more clearly. And then the second solution was when the angle was not correct, we need to rotate the views to get a better view of the bus stop to see what's available there. So we need to rotate the perspective. And finally, sometimes when doing the first two steps don't help, like some large vehicles, they obstruct the view. We then need to shift the viewpoint, meaning like the street center line snap location need to shift a little bit to have a better view of the bus stop. So we implement these several things into the workflow. This diagram shows the actual implementation of the strategies and the automation process. So very quickly, the three steps. The first step is we used Florida data to train the YOLO model. The YOLO model is an object detection model. I believe the Renee's presentation, they probably use a version of this as well. So existing algorithm, off-the-shelf algorithm, don't allow us to detect certain types of amenities because previous researchers haven't trained the model yet. So we need to collect field data and manually label some of the data, like I think the shelter and also the bench, we do need to do some transfer learning so that make the model can recognize the object we are interested in, like pedestrians or vehicles. Those are the objects commonly used in other applications. So those were trained. But for shelter and bench, we need to customize the model for by ourselves. And the second step, dynamic prediction, we implement the several strategies I mentioned earlier. So this is the default view, but then we need to implement several rounds of strategy. Like you see the final strategies being implemented here, but we did a lot of testing to figure out how to efficiently implement these strategies while not increasing the use of API usage. Like I said, the Google Street View image, the Google Street View APIs are cheap, but they are not free. If for a particular bus stop, we need to extract so many images, then the cost can add up. So this is the final flow we have implemented. And after this, we need to do an evaluation. We got the results detected using the computer vision algorithm. We trained also the APIs to automate the process. Then we evaluate the result. We use the data from San Francisco collected by Marcel to validate our result. And eventually, we were very fortunate to get very good results. You see, like this is the these are the accuracy measures. It's all over 90%. It's very high. That means like when we implement the algorithm, the workflow, we were able to successfully detect shelter and bench. And the last column shows the API usage. So if we take a look at this row, the number of bus stops are 650, and then we used a little bit over 10,000 API calls. That means like we extracted this number of Google Street View images to be able to detect the amenities at these bus stops. So on average, we need to make 16 API calls, extracting 16 images to allow us to have confidence in detecting whether or not a location has a shelter, has a bench or not. And if you are interested in additional details, here is the paper that we published earlier this year. I should acknowledge the great work done by my students and collaborators. Their names are listed here. And we also appreciate the funding support from Center for Transit-Oriented Communities. So the work I have demonstrated so far, we implemented the workflow mainly to detect shelter and bench. We were trying to extend the work in two directions. The first one is we should also detect other bus stop amenities. Some of them are easy, relatively easy, like trash can. But some of them are more difficult because of either the amenity is very small in their size, so you can imagine even human eyes cannot see them well. So for the computer vision algorithms to see them, it's a bit challenging. Or sometimes it's difficult for the computer vision algorithm to isolate the amenities from the context. Meaning like if we, for example, street trees, if we take a look at a Google Street View image and see, trying to find if there are street trees covering the bus stop, it's there are some geometric computations needed. So there are some additional challenges we are tackling, and our end goal is to develop the methods so that we can develop a nationwide bus stop amenity database. We have also developed a dashboard to show the result. The work is still work in progress. And lastly, I want to shamelessly promote an ongoing project related to AI as well. I know many of you are interested in not only transit, but also active transportation. So in another NSF-supported project, we have developed a tool called Street Design AI to assist road designers or just any individual who are interested in reimagining the streets, leveraging AI capabilities. So here is a YouTube video demonstrate how the system we have developed, how the tool we have to develop work. We are looking for study participants to try out the system and provide feedback. Email me if you are interested in trying it out and providing feedback. That's all for my presentation today. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jacob, for very interesting and insightful presentation. We have 3 minutes left, so I'll start some of the questions that we have prepared. So this is a question for all of you. So if you could change one thing about how cities or agencies currently approach AI in transit, what it would be? And it can be like any ethical consideration, any new technologies that they are overlooking or not using, or any social aspects they should consider they are not. So any of you, if you can have any input, that would be great.
I can start.
Go ahead, Diego.
Yeah. Well, based on my experience working not only here in North America, but also in the global South, Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, and what I see is we still don't have the the framework to really integrate, for example, industry, government, research, and build this community, build this ecosystem, and make the communication through those participants like more effective. Yeah, so I think it is. I think in a way, I think the first step is to find a common forum for different industries and partners to share the problems and opportunities as well with for example, research labs. And then with this, we can build the solutions and make this communication flow even better. So I think this is one thing that is missing in the transportation landscape, to connect solutions and build something that is meaningful for transit agencies.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very
I'll be quick and just say I would love to see cities be more confident in testing new technology and understand that there are already a lot of regulations in place around things like data collection, data storage, and what's permissible in public spaces that they can leverage to make sure that they hold vendors accountable to the way that they use AI.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very
Yeah,
insightful.
very quickly, I think I understand like a lot of the transit agencies, especially in the US right now, are facing very difficult funding strategy issues. So like AI, this new thing, if the value is not demonstrated, like why they would have the resources to try it out. But I would say that the federal government actually could play a role to try to incentivize more testing of the technologies, so that the value can be demonstrated. Like the work done by Hidden AI, what Renee showed there is a great example of good use of AI. But I think there are many potentials out there, and transit agencies should both keep an open eye for these opportunities. Meanwhile, push for uh, federal level to hopefully demonstrate some pilot use cases.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Renee, Diego, and Jacob, for sharing your insights and experiences with us today. I also would like to thank you, the audience who watched this panel. And with that, we will conclude our session on AI in transit. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
So
you.
thanks, Jacob,
Yeah.
Mina, Dr.
Thank you.
Silva, and Renee. Really appreciate it. We will now go on a break and return at in 15 minutes. So thank you very much.
Thank
We
you.
will appreciate great insights on AI, and we will see you in about 15, so at 11:15 a.m. For green transportation in rural settings. Okay, hello and welcome back to the Research-to-Practice Transit Symposium. I'm very excited for this next session about green transportation in rural settings. We have fantastic special guests today. I am very highly interested in this session because it's near and dear to my heart. Is my hometown of Fresno, California, and a lot of the session focuses on Fresno and then the beautiful northwestern coast in Humboldt. So we're going to first up have our first speaker, Moses Stites, who is the general manager of the Fresno County Rural Transit Agency. He oversees the administration and operations of both fixed route and demand response services for 13 incorporated cities and 29 unincorporated communities in Fresno County, with a fleet of 115 vehicles and an annual budget of $9 to $10 million. Since his time with FCRTA, he and his staff have succeeded in replacing over 50% of the fleet with alternative fuel vehicles, with a goal of 100% ZEV fleet by 2025. Following Moses, we will have a presentation by Jerome Kiriazi, who currently works as a planner with the Humboldt Transit Authority, a joint powers agency operating multiple fixed route and on-demand transit systems in Humboldt County, California. Along with day-to-day planning and operation tasks, Jerome supports HTA's efforts as a lead implementing agency for the region's aggressive VMT reduction targets and leads HTA's transition to a zero-emission hydrogen fleet. They currently serve on the Humboldt County Planning Commission and previously served on the California Energy Commission Advisory Committee for the Clean Transportation Program Investment Plan and the Redwood Coast Energy Authority Community Advisory Committee. Next, we will have Gloria Huerta as our main presenter from MioCar. Gloria is the Chief Operating Officer who has been involved in developing, implementing, and managing car share operations and member services throughout the United States over the last 6 years. In her current role, her primary focus has been on the strategic development, deployment, management, and expansion of MioCar's electric vehicle car sharing program available in Richmond, Stockton, Tracy, Tulare County, and Kern County. As someone who grew up in Orosi, an unincorporated community where MioCar originally launched, Gloria has seen the impact that a mobility program like MioCar has had in our community. And then finally, Rachel Heckel. Her experience is focused on supporting business development and organizational growth for shared mobility models. In addition to supporting shared mobility projects directly, her experience with financing of these models, such as the Valley Go and Green Raiteros, in both the mobility and community development sectors, having led the $14 million development of a historic building into a social enterprise and arts incubator. So I'm excited to hear first from Moses. Let me go ahead and I will be sharing your slides. Let me go ahead and, sorry, it's just taking a moment to get them up. There we go. Okay, now we are ready. So please feel free to begin whenever.
Great, thank you very much. And I'm going to kind of go through it very rapidly. The slides will be available for everybody, but there is a 2-minute video that really portrays a lot of what the agency has done infrastructure-wise in the green technology. Next slide, please. This map, it depicts our rural Fresno County area. Chad already described the 13 reference to 13 incorporated cities and 39 unincorporated communities, 6,000 square miles. So you can imagine the challenges serving this county. That's why we have a lot of vehicles outstationed, but it goes to the challenge of having EV vehicles throughout the county, especially with utility challenges. Next slide, please. This is the current fleet that's made up of FCRTA for electric vehicles. We have 44 CNG vehicles, 58 electric, and also we do not or have ever operated any diesel vehicles. We do have some gas vehicles, but our objective again is to be 100% compliant EV by hopefully by 2030, if not sooner. Next slide, please. This was FCRTA's EV transition. It really started back in 2013, and you can see the evolution here with the dates and the titles. We started off with some Zenith vans. They're no longer in service. We went to 30 and 35-foot vehicles, even 40-foot buses with Proterras. And we also took on some solar charging units as well. And then ultimately, we earmarked our infrastructure building that is really the highlight of our agency that's going to serve and help us with our ultimate transition to EV. Next slide, please. This is the new maintenance facility and operations center that we opened August of this year. It's 7.5 acres, 32 charging units, battery energy management system, and solar panels, CNG gas generator as a backup, and also a self management system for the chargers, along with a battery energy management system. Located mid-center of the county, between Tulare County and Madera County in the city of Selma, that serves East and West Fresno County. If you recall back to that map, that is really quite large. Next slide, please. This just gives you kind of an idea of what it took to build that maintenance facility. Really like to highlight that we put in there 1,800 solar panels in there. We put a ponding basin in there on site, and we utilized solar panels to back up the building. And then we used our bus ports, the covers for solar panels, to generate energy for the chargers, which work separately from the building. Once you get into the utility mode, the utility company requires separate meters, separate switch gears, a lot of other infrastructure that is required when you're putting in a new maintenance and operations facility. Next slide, please. This picture just depicts some of the highlights of what we went through the construction. If some of you have gone through construction, you can imagine what we went through. No different, but this was a one-off facility. That solar panel down on the right, that's in a ponding basin, and in addition to those solar panels on the bus port. Next slide, please. You can see the bus ports in that left photo, and the solar panels above it, and we use cantilevers instead of traditional iron rail. And then down in the bottom, that's part of the infrastructure for the electrical of the switch gears and all the conduit that ran underneath the entire 7.5 acres. About $1 million worth of concrete. And we use concrete versus asphalt for many environmental reasons, and also return on investment and cost effectiveness. Next slide, please. This is a video that really depicts our project. If you could watch it, please. Thank you.
Okay, let me, I'm gonna watch and make sure that the sound goes through. We tested it, but let me.
Welcome to the Fresno County Rural Transit Agency's cutting-edge electric bus maintenance facility in Selma, California, an innovative hub setting new standards in sustainable transportation. At the heart of this newly constructed facility is a 1.3 megawatt DC solar system designed to power the future of electric transit. This advanced solar array features a cantilever solar carport, 3 cantilever solar bus ports, and a ground-mounted solar farm, combining energy efficiency with smart design. This system is the result of a groundbreaking collaboration between Lean Solar, Hodges Electric, and Intertie. This facility is equipped with the latest in electric bus charging technology, including a 250 kilowatt wave induction bus charging system that can charge a bus with 1 mile of range per minute, 2 80 kilowatt BYD fast chargers, 27 Witricity induction chargers, and 2 ChargePoint EV chargers add to the comprehensive charging network supporting FCRTA's electric fleet. Backing up this green energy infrastructure is a DC microgrid reinforced by 2 Intertie 373 kilowatt-hour battery systems, ensuring energy storage and uninterrupted power to the facility. Overseeing the entire system is a state-of-the-art custom energy management system, seamlessly controlling solar generation, storage, and electric vehicle charging to optimize efficiency and sustainability. The FCRTA Electric Bus Maintenance Facility represents a bold leap forward in green energy transit, integrating innovative solar solutions and advanced charging technologies to drive the future of public transportation in Fresno County. The solar system is both AC and DC coupled. This system operates in an islanded mode with the ability to connect to the PG&E grid, ensuring reliability and energy flexibility for all operational needs. The Fresno County Rural Transit Agency, leading the charge toward a cleaner, greener tomorrow.
Thank you, Chad. Next slide, please. These are some of the current and upcoming projects that we're doing. We were fortunate to land some funding from TRSIP, and we're going to do a microgrid resiliency hub. What you saw there in the video is really a quasi-microgrid resiliency hub with emphasis on solar. We're doing quite a bit. We've been working with PG&E, who's asked us to assist them with developing some guides on some of this infrastructure for the future with transit properties. Next slide, please. And we really value our partnership with Caltrans. Without some of the sustainable planning grants to do some of these studies, we wouldn't be able to have, one, built the facility, two, plan for some other documents that help us in planning our infrastructure and also our service delivery. Next slide, please. And lastly, this is probably one of the most important pages, and really it's the coordinated effort with all of these entities. You can see some of them are familiar to you all, and some may not be, but I can't stress enough the collaboration and the integration that we have with all these agencies on a good day, on a bad day, but we all get it done if we collaborate together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moses. Really appreciate your presentation here today. Fascinating things going on in Fresno. Next, we'll hear from Jerome Curiazzi from Humboldt Transit Agency. Sorry.
Let me share my screen here. All right, is that coming through?
Yes, it is.
Great. Thank you for having me. And I'll be talking today about our progress to date in transitioning to a hydrogen fleet. There it goes. Just a quick overview of what I'll be talking about. I'll be going pretty quickly here as there's limited, try to pack as much information as I can. So an overview of HTA, we're Joint Powers Authority. We serve 5 incorporated cities as well as the county of Humboldt, and we also provide service down south into Mendocino County, a neighboring county. We're approaching about 40 vehicles that are currently subject to California's Innovative Clean Transit Rule. A bit more overview of where we're located. We're a very rural location. We're about 3 hours from Interstate 5, and we cover about half of the area that Moses talked about. But a lot of the inner city area that we cover is very mountainous. It's a lot of highway miles. And then we also, the majority of our population is focused around Humboldt Bay, where most of our ridership occurs. We're also in our efforts, keeping in mind our neighbors in broader Northern California region, in the North State Super Region. We collaborate through the Transit Working Group, and there's kind of a snapshot of the type of service you'll find by these agencies as well. It's all very mountainous, rural with 4 seasons. Here is a look at our plan in transitioning to hydrogen fleet. By 2040, while some of our routes can certainly be served by electric, we're looking to convert to 100% hydrogen, primarily to increase the volume of hydrogen fuel that we consume, to bring down that per unit cost of fuel and help to distribute those fixed operating costs across more units of fuel. Why we're choosing hydrogen, some studies we've done started back in 2018 is about half to about half to 2/3 of our routes. Well, about half of them you cannot serve by battery electrics, even so. Certainly during when these analyses were conducted, and then that's still true today. We operate 3 battery electric buses right now, and that is currently what we're finding. We have our newest electric buses are 2023 Gillig battery electric buses. Great vehicles, but we just don't see the range out of them. And also vehicle type is another challenge that we found with being able to operate battery electric buses. When we started this process, we even for those very long vehicle blocks that we have, which are both commuter and intercity runs, we didn't have a vehicle that was available on the market to do the mileage that we needed. So we worked early on with New Flyer and secured some TIRSIP funding and helped them develop an extended range low floor bus. So we have the first one of these new models operating here. It's out in service now, and it added the difference is the addition of 4 fuel tanks, increasing the fuel capacity up to 56 kilograms. We also released a performance report, and that's available. You can reach out to me if you would like that information. Also, it's distributed through the Zebra program if you're familiar with Zebra. Here's a quick overview of our performance. We've really focused on testing this in mountainous highway routes just to see how it would perform. And as well as over long distance, and we got a very good range. And currently, it's in service in the sort of test 1 that you see in this table here, which is our local commuter route that serves more of the Humboldt Bay area, and we're seeing in-service efficiency right in line with what our performance tests were. So this bus is doing great so far. And so with the development of that bus, we've increased the number of blocks that we can serve by a zero emission vehicle. So we're about 2/3 of our blocks can be addressed either by battery electrics or hydrogen. But we still have some blocks primarily because of vehicle type that we're not able to serve yet. And we are still trying to secure funding. We've had some unsuccessful application attempts with the Air Resources Board, but we're trying to help fill the gap here of the very common sort of 19 to 29 passenger cutaway that you find on a lot of rural, more mountainous runs. And we are anticipating that we would be piloting a higher pressure H70 vehicle type. So basically, you're trying to put a higher pressure fuel system on these vehicles to get enough fuel on them to get the range you need. So we're hoping we can make progress there. We've also we have secured some funding through CalSTA to pilot the development of a hydrogen coach. But that funding is stalled currently for a variety of reasons, but we're hopeful that that effort will pick back up, and there's a collaboration across multiple agencies in California with the development of this vehicle. We currently are fueling our single hydrogen bus with temporary fueling. This is through Linde, and this is a simple cascade fill. There's essentially no moving parts. A high pressure trailer is delivered, and then you use that existing high pressure to push that fuel onto the bus. It's working great. It is expensive, and the fuel cost is quite high. The majority of that cost is the lease price. It's not just the fuel. So that's an all-in into the bus cost. Our permanent hydrogen filling station is in about 30% design state. We're doing a liquid storage on-site fueling station, and we have secured funding, both FTA funding as well as state TIRSIT funding for this. We're going to be fairly unique in that we're including a public high pressure or H70 dispenser. And this will be one of the few dispensers in existence that will be meeting the latest J2601 fueling, so it can fill up to a 30 kilogram fill, and we're looking to help support the adoption of medium duty fuel cell trucks in the region. And it also is designed to help minimize evaporative losses during fueling, which is a huge issue in this market. It has been a struggle and a lot of work to sort of navigate that challenge, and we're hoping that what's on paper will actually pencil out. I did want to highlight, given our rural area, we got 4 qualified bidders and we got a single proposal, and that was across 2 bid attempts. And that was largely due to our location and how early a market this is. There were few companies that were willing to commit to the O&M and response times needed for a location as remote as we are. And just to also highlight fuel costs, this is a projected attempt at all into the bus fuel costs. This is I'm hopeful at around $15 a kilogram. But also noting there are only 3 liquid hydrogen producers west of the Mississippi. And in addition, we are quite remote from the 3 that are here. And so this really contributes to pretty significant fuel costs. And Portland and Washington are struggling with that issue as well. And lastly, we can't do this alone. We can't be an island, single sole hydrogen consumer, just from a resiliency and a cost perspective in terms of long-term viability. So we're really trying to take the lead in developing a hydrogen market, and we're trying to leverage opportunities with other industries locally, as well as other fleets. Our local trash fleet is very interested. And then we're trying to start up conversations with freight delivery, and then also Caltrans is interested too, given the large territory they cover. And we also are working with our regional transportation planning agency, who is leading an effort to look at opportunities for collaboration between the West Coast Alternative Fuel Corridor for freight, as well as transit, and it's focused on the North State Super Region. And it's through continued efforts in trying to make sure that our success continues through developing a regional network. And lastly, addressing the training needs of other supportive sectors, such as, even all the way down to tow truck drivers, but also a huge need is auto mechanics and bus mechanics. And so we have funding through TIRSIP for the first phase of the Zero Emission Training Center. And we are starting our process that Moses went through of trying to develop our next generation facility to help support this transition. And we are a long ways from finding the funding for that. So congrats to Moses on that. And thank you. Hopefully I didn't go too far over time there.
Okay, thank you very much, Jerome. Really appreciate it. Great presentation about the strides you're making in Humboldt County and some of the challenges that you've faced. I think there's a lot of lessons learned. So next we'll hear from Gloria Huerta from MUCAR. Gloria, take it away. Thank you.
Hello, Gloria Huerta, Chief Operating Officer of MUCAR. I've been with Meowcar. My first day on the job was in March of 2019. First day was going to community meetings, talk about what is car sharing, what should we name the program, what should the pricing be. And through those community meetings, we have had the same pricing since we started, $4 an hour, 35 for the day. And the name Meowcar came from those meetings. The community liked the name. It's a play on Play of the Spanglish of the San Joaquin Valley of Tulare and Kern counties. And I think it's important when you're doing work with the community to understand what their needs are and also get input on how to shape a car share program or how to shape any type of program that's coming into their community. I actually grew up in a rural unincorporated community where Meowcar originally launched. It's called Orosi. People still ride their horses around town from time to time as a mode of transportation, and I think it's really cool. So through that, the pictures you see in this slide deck, those were names that we had come up with. So it was pretty interesting to see how the community was just like, no, we're not really fond of these names. This is what we like. So through there, it's been really cool to see Meowcar really grow from the ground up. We're a California-based nonprofit. We were incorporated in 2019. We're committed to hiring locally where we operate. I think it's important as we have expanded to make sure to hire people that know the community, know the area. We handle all of our customer service in-house, and we have a 24/7 bilingual call center. And we're focused on providing access to affordable transportation in marginalized communities. We are a small but mighty team. There's 7 of us, and we are located in Tulare County, Kern County, Richmond, Stockton, and next month we will be deploying in Watsonville. So it's a pretty long range. When I initially started, the distance from our nearest site to our furthest site was 2 hours away, and now it's probably tripled or quadrupled. So our rates are $4 an hour, 35 for the day. What's included is 150 miles. Anything over would be 35 cents per mile. And then there is a one-time $20 membership processing fee that gets used to process a motor vehicle record for all of our members. Once that's approved, then we reimburse the members the $20 or free driving credit for their first trip. We have gone through different vehicles since 2019, and I'll touch more on that a little later on lessons learned. But currently we have Chevy Bolts available as well as Hyundai Konas and Ioniq 5s. We like vehicles that have a higher range, especially when we have members driving in some more rural areas. We understand that the distance that they have to drive might be a little further, and then with the charging infrastructure, it might be a little hard to find a level 3 charger in some locations. The registration process, all of our members must be 21 or over, have a valid US driver's license. We do accept the AB60 or equivalent in California. AB60 is for undocumented drivers. And our members have to have a valid debit, credit, or prepaid card. So if they meet this, they would then download the ZEV Co-op app. And in order to create their account, they would need the driver's license, payment method, email, and cell phone number. Once the application is complete, the members, it's not like I submit this and now I'm approved instant process. They do have to approve that one-time $20 membership processing fee and then wait anywhere between 3 to 5 business days for the motor vehicle record to get processed. And then once that's approved, we do orientations with all of our members. And that's to make sure that they feel comfortable using an electric vehicle. A lot of the times it's the first time that our members are using an electric vehicle, and we want to make sure that they feel comfortable, They understand that this is community car sharing, so the expectation is that when they return the vehicle, they're going to have to charge it, or else the next person that's scheduled to use the vehicle is going to call us. So once they complete the orientation, which can be done via phone, video, or in person, we activate their account. These are some of our member guidelines. Remember to charge the vehicle when you're ending a reservation. Make sure to wipe the vehicle clean before and after each trip. We do have CDC recommended cleaning supplies in all of our vehicles, and they do get inspected multiple times a week by our staff to make sure that they're clean from the interior. If they are missing items or need to be restocked with cleaning supplies, that's being taken care of. Pickup and drop off is at the same location, and only approved meal car members can drive the vehicle. There were times when I would be driving through Visalia and I was like, oh, someone's driving our meal car. And then I'm like, oh, that's not who I thought it was. So you would be surprised how many people have done that before. So for us, like, if a partner is driving the vehicle or the person that's supposed to have the vehicle, we do have to suspend their account, but also we're like, hey, if you refer someone, we'll give you $20 worth of driving credit. So at the end of the day, it's a win-win situation. And then if there is an accident and the member is held at fault, they're responsible for up to a $500 deductible. This is some of our data from 2024. So we had a little over 4,900 bookings, 396,000 miles traveled, and over 64,400 hours of meal car vehicles in use. Partners are key. Wherever we have, when we first started and where we've deployed now and expanded, we've gotten more partners that are local organizations or council of governments. So it's important to build that partnership and those relationships with the agency operate. This is a picture of some local support and events. And then some of the lessons learned. We initially started with BMW i3s and Chevy Bolts. We learned that it was important to diversify our fleet. We have gone through about 4 or 5 different recalls with the Chevy Bolts. And then because of that, we had to ground those vehicles in rural settings. It was critical to not have the vehicles online because even though they had recommendations as to how to support the recall, it just wasn't feasible in a rural area. Some of the recommendations were like, hey, bring the car back with 70 miles of charge. It's like, well, we can't have this burden on our members. So in that situation, it was good that we had the BMW i3s because we had these other vehicles that were available for members to use. But over time, the BMW i3s were more expensive to maintain and were money pits. So we ended up getting rid of those. And even with those recalls that we've had to endure, the Bolts have been really good for operations too, since we handle mostly everything in-house. So if a vehicle breaks down, it's just easier for our team to access. COVID-19, we were just ramping up utilization in the Tulare, Kern County regions when COVID-19 happened, and we had to shut down for a few months to restructure things and figure out how to make sure our members felt safe and comfortable using the service. So unfortunately, we didn't get actual concise data on how the service was going to be when it first started. Site feasibility expectation versus reality. There are some sites that community members really, really like, and then it's not until we do a walkthrough with an electrician where we actually find out what true costs can look like. So sometimes we have to change the location of where we would like to have a site because it's just really, really costly to do the infrastructure and also do trenching if needed. Project timeline should anticipate supply chain delays and EVSE construction delays. So we've dealt with chip shortages on vehicles. We've seen vehicles that were supposed to be $30,000 go up to $48,000. Even the used vehicle market increase. So we've learned to add more money whenever we're applying to grants to make sure that we're covered for vehicle procurement. And then with the EVSE construction delays, even if we have vehicles available, like we can have them ready, but if the EVSE is not online, then that's a problem. So we beta test everywhere where we are going to be to make sure that everything is working correctly. And once that's taken care of, then we will go live with the system. And then outreach and education to local community organizations and members is key to the participation of new programs like this. We work with UC Davis to send new member surveys, and then after trip-based surveys, and every time they complete these, we give them free driving credit. The testimonial I have on the bottom, which I'll read, this member used that promo code over 500 times, so they took over 500 trips to take their kids to school, go grocery shopping, take them to the doctor, and this is what Danielle had to say. I would not have been able to make my trips without Mio Car. I currently do not have a car. I share a car with my spouse, and when he attends work, I am left without a car. I'm very likely to recommend Mio Car to friends and family because it is affordable and very reliable. That's all I have for now. If anyone wants to contact me, my email is gloria@miocar.org. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gloria, and thanks to all our presenters. We have about 9 minutes for some questions. We got some audience questions. One was why this is actually these first couple questions are for Moses relating to the center in Selma. Is why just 250 kilowatt chargers? That seems rather slow, he said. And then why wireless chargers? Because there are maybe some efficiency losses.
Good questions. I'll take on the second one first. The wireless chargers were, as you know, technology changes. So we had a pivot, and the company that we were originally trying to do the wireless level 2 charging, it went out of business. So we had to pivot and go in with plug-in chargers. And the 250 kilowatt charger is a wave charger. It's a level 3. And that's an inductive charger, and we only went with one because it's an opportunity charger. And when you look at the cost to operate electric vehicles, just like hydrogen fuel, the cost is exorbitant, and you really have to diversify. And we have 31 level 2 chargers on site and one level 3. And that level 3 is just opportunity. It comes in mid-route, charges for 10, 20 minutes at the most, gets 40, 50, 60 miles, continues on route. The other ones are quite efficient. I'd probably say within an hour to 2 hours, you get anywhere from 25 to 40 miles charge. And then the battery energy management system, each battery has 373 kilowatt of storage hours. So we're able to use that energy from the batteries that's stored there in excess from the solar panels. Again, 1,800 panels on site. So we do store quite a bit, and we're getting a third battery. So hopefully I've answered the questions there, but it's really design as you go, and it's what's available at the time. Just like Gloria was mentioning about cars, we have Chevy Bolts. We had Zenith vans, we have Proterra buses, we know what the story is on them. You have to be able to be flexible, and you have to pivot, especially when you're in construction.
Thank you, Moses. Really appreciate that. This
Sure.
next question is for Jerome. Wanted to know, are these buses internal combustion hydrogen or fuel cell electric?
No, they're fuel cell.
Fuel cell.
Internal combustion hydrogen are not eligible or compliant with the Innovative Clean Transit.
Excellent. And then kind of a follow-up question, your presentation was great about kind of explaining all of the factors in choosing hydrogen. This viewer asked, you do make a good argument not to do hydrogen in the sense that you have fuel costs because of the high fuel costs and limited producers. What were some of the things that kind of pushed you over the edge to do hydrogen for your buses?
Yeah, it was two main factors were we'd have to significantly increase the size of our fleet to meet our same service. We just couldn't figure out a way around that, even with on-route opportunity charging. And second, with on-route opportunity charging, that infrastructure would be spread out over a very large geographic area, and maintenance staff were just nervous about that. And then on top of that, in rural areas, we run into the same issue that Gloria talked about in terms of electrical infrastructure, being able to provide the power you need. And in fact, in southern Humboldt, we even had about 2 years ago, PG&E put a moratorium on any new loads in southern Humboldt for the unforeseeable future. So we would have had to do a pretty significant pivot in that situation as well. But fuel costs are significant, and right now we're being very transparent with the state. We're saying, here's what it is. You need to help us figure it out.
Excellent, thank you. And just for those outside California or not familiar with California, PG&E stands for Pacific Gas and Electric, which is the utility in Northern California. Northern California basically being anything north of Bakersfield, pretty much. I forget exactly if it's Tulare or Bakersfield that where the cutoff is for PG&E. And now switching over to Gloria, the MeoCar system has made a lot of progress, lots of growth. What are some lessons learned that you would like to share with those that may be interested in doing that in their communities?
It's a lot of work, but I mean, if anyone is interested, we have a toolkit on our website, meocar.org, that has a whole presentation slide deck that they can download and learn more about how to start your own program. But I would say it's kind of, I mean, now that I've done it, I've worn all the hats. I've been on call, managed 27 vehicles on the ground, figured out why this car isn't working, how to jump, things like that. So I think the highest costs are insurance. So it's especially these days, that's a very high cost. And then the fleet procurement. Once you have those two items kind of figured out, it's it's more manageable to do the operations. But if anyone's interested in learning more, we don't want to gatekeep. So I do also co-lead a car share working group through the Clean Mobility Equity Alliance. So if anyone's interested, they could sign up to be a member there. And we do have meetings. I believe it's every other month. So.
Fantastic strides that you've made. Is anything that was that came up in your growth and expansion that was unexpected?
Recalls. Also, when we first started, we have tech in the vehicles that had 3G units, and then there were issues with connectivity that we reported, and our hardware company is based out of Germany. So they sent me some codes. I'm not a developer. I'm not that type of person. So there I was like coding into every vehicle to make sure that we got upgrades overnight. So I think it's just important to know that every day is going to be different. And always, like, even though you might have protocols in place, be sure and ready to pivot, as somebody else had mentioned, because it's just going to be different every day.
Thank you, Gloria. Lots of progress that you've made with MioCar, providing access, transportation to the Central Valley, to the San Joaquin Valley, and beyond. Thank you, Jerome, for your presentation about hydrogen rural Northern California. Lots of great strides that you've made. A model agency for those that want to do hydrogen. And then finally, Moses, thank you so much for your presentation about the groundbreaking, facility that has been built in Fresno County. So thanks again to everybody for your presentations. We really appreciate it. We will now go on another break while we will have, after which we will have our presentation, our panel discussion about automated transit shuttles. So we will see you in about 15 minutes. Thanks again, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Chad. So we've come to the last session of the symposium that's covered a lot of different territory, a lot of different topics. But we thought we'd save for the last session a look into the future. And one of the main things in the future of transit is automated shuttles. This has been a growing area, a lot of tentative pilots, and we're still slowly getting to a point where things are starting to scale up. And so we've assembled 3 experts in the field to share some quick thoughts about their own experiences and or issues that they want to focus in on. And then we'll have a bit of a panel discussion at the end. Our 3 speakers, I won't do the bios. You can go to the full program and look at the full bios. I want to get right into the discussion. So our 3 speakers are Angie Williams. She's director of U2C programs at Jacksonville Transportation Authority, where there's the largest project for automated shuttles is under development. Dr. Prithvi Manchutha, assistant professor of civil engineering at the University of North Florida, and Carol Schweiger, president of Schweiger Consulting LLC. So Angie, I'll ask you to go first and bring up your slides. Thank you.
Just about there. So are you guys with me? You could see it. It's going good.
Yes.
All right. I want to talk to you a little bit about the love of my life since about 2017, and that is the Bay Street Innovation Corridor. It's a huge project. I kind of call it the pink woolly mammoth of projects because transportation has been around, so it's old. But this is new and it's different and it's loaded with a lot of different things. The project itself is putting 14 autonomous vehicles on about a 3-mile stretch of roadway in downtown Jacksonville, and also building what we call the Autonomous Innovation Center. Sorry about this. I want to make sure that you guys could see the slides clearly. We didn't just start this program. We had what we call a test and learn facility where we actually tested 5 different vehicles over 8 different platforms to really figure out what it was we needed to do and how we needed to do it, because nobody at that time was doing this type of work. In addition to that, we set out deployments on using these various vehicles at the Mayo Clinic during COVID. And yes, we still kept the project going during COVID. We utilize it to carry COVID samples autonomously with no human intervention. And then we literally had a project going with FSCJ where we helped the university create an autonomous vehicle program. Now, with this project, as you can see, there are many contractors and stakeholders. The contractors came together under one unit called the V2R team under Balfour Beatty as the lead. But as you can see, any of these companies could, in fact, have been a prime on a contract. The other thing that we did that was very unique with this project is we did what was called a progressive project delivery agreement, where under this one agreement, we had an entity to provide an autonomous vehicle, design and build the system, and then turn around at the end of the completion of the construction and the acquisition of the vehicle, put the vehicle in service. This is the route itself. There are 12 branded stations along Bay Street, and it pretty much services our entertainment and sports district. Now, what I want to show you on this slide is pretty much the timeline. As you can see, from January 22, when we started the design phase, until June 2025, that's pretty aggressive for a project of this magnitude. To expound a little bit more about the magnitude of this project, there's the Autonomous Innovation Center, which in itself is where all the operation of the autonomous vehicles and the operators are housed. On top of the building, we did something that's not been done in the Jacksonville or even Northeast Florida area. We installed a microgrid with a battery electric storage solution. There are electric chargers, level 2 and level 3 chargers. Cybersecurity was another entity that we really had to pay close attention to and make sure that we had a robust system, up to including looking at ISO 27001, putting in for the U2C, and then the branded stations and the vehicle itself along the corridor. I'll quickly go through this building. I was like putting in a 3D puzzle. We actually erected this building in 14 days. There are about 285 core concrete panels and about 180 hollow core panels that make up this building. Again, the solar grid and the maintenance and operations that's done within the building. You can see the battery storage unit area where the vehicles are parked, the command center, some cool graphic design in the building. And then we often have first responders come and work with us to make sure that we understand some of the nuances that may have been created when we created this very new vehicle. Again, the vehicle now, instead of the U2C program, the service itself is called the Navi. And the Navi really came from us working together with manufacturers to put what we initially wanted was a purpose-built shuttle. What we ended up getting, and we worked with Holon and ZF, but what we ended up getting was a Ford Pro van that we installed an OXA robotics kit, and then for 88 capacity, we went through Roush to install the Braun ability. But that's what we have right now, a retrofitted Ford Pro. But what we're going to in the future are some of the more purpose-built shuttles that are available. Now, I didn't even speak in reference to the work that was needed on the corridor. We actually created what I call a smart infrastructure that include pedestrian detection. That is passive pedestrian detection, where an individual just needs to walk near the roadway and the light will change based on the camera seeing individuals looking like they're going to cross the street. Open payment system, and we even created a 5G private network to run the vehicle systems on. A lot of what we did also was with our stakeholders, like the city of Jacksonville. We didn't want to put in a lot of poles for the 5G and the cameras. So there were areas that we needed lighting. And so instead of just a pole, we increased the safety of the corridor by adding HAPCO lighting and installing the equipment that we needed on the lighting systems. Now there were some risks and challenges. One, at the reason why we did the retrofit was that there were no Buy America compliant vehicle manufacturers of autonomous vehicles. Now, I know some people say, well, why not Lucid or Tesla? Well, those vehicles are not for the public per se, because in public transportation, everyone has to ride. And so there's something called ADA compliance. The vehicle would have to be equipped where somebody with a disability could could ride. The other is the useful life determination. The useful life on this vehicle is not like a useful life on another vehicles, because most of the money or most of the cost is not in the vehicle itself, but in the software and the technology used. Insurance liability, state and federal regulation. There is a federal motor vehicle safety standard, but there's not an autonomous vehicle safety standard. And so working with NHTSA and other entities to make sure that we are doing the right thing. Another thing I want to really leave with the education team here, and that is this isn't new technology, isn't like the field of dreams. You can't build it and it will come. You have to build an ecosystem to support the project so that it's viable. That is, we worked with FSCJ so that we would have people ready to be employed, because the type of employee I need to run these type vehicles don't exist right now. Working with stakeholders like the commerce department, STEM and STEAM programs at high school. Why? To feed FSCJ or UF if there's a program, so that we can have employees, and build a system where it would be attractive for a vehicle manufacturer to come. I'm not sure if any of you saw recently, just this week, we signed an agreement with Holon. Holon will now be manufacturing autonomous vehicles in Jacksonville as a result of this program. I know I went rather fast because time is of the essence. If you need to get in touch with me, you can certainly do so by any of the information presented here. You can use your phone, that's my LinkedIn page, or my email address. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for your time.
Thank you, Angie. That was great. It really shows we're in a new phase where up till now the pilots have been of just a few vehicles testing to make sure they work primarily in customer acceptance. And you already have got an operational plan and an ambitious future plan, which with a whole network, which is going to be very cool to follow. So
Yes,
now
sir.
we'll turn to Prithvi. My apologies for butchering your name before, but you've done a number of studies both in Gainesville, looking at the Gainesville pilot, but also a survey, a national and international survey of pilot projects. So why don't you share some of your thoughts, Prithvi? And you're still muted. You're still muted.
Oh, sorry, thank you.
There we go. There we go.
I have to unshare it so that, yeah, let me see if I can share the right screen. Can you see my screen? Okay, thank you.
Yes, we
Thanks for
can.
the nod,
Yes.
Angie. All right. Okay, so yeah, thank you so much. And a lot of what I'll discuss will probably sound like the past to you, considering you've been seeing all the latest and greatest from Angie so far. So, but it's good anyway, so that we can see the trajectory or the graph of where we came from. So, so I'm going to discuss a couple of projects that I've worked on when I was at University of Florida. With the iStreet program there, I just recently moved to UNF. With all the great things happening in Jacksonville, I couldn't stop myself from moving here. So I'll talk about those projects, and then we can move on to the panel discussion. All right. So this was one of the first shuttles we had in Gainesville. So the service only ran till 2022. This was a little bit over a mile long corridor. One of the interesting thing we did test is the connectivity. I believe at that point of time we were one of the few autonomous shuttles in the country that had connectivity to the traffic signals, and the shuttle was not relying on the service operators to make the turns at the signals. So this is one of the video from the shuttle where you can see the signal time being communicated with the shuttle and the shuttle making the turn. Just like Angie mentioned, this is you have to build an ecosystem for any kind of autonomous transit service to be successful. You see all those stakeholders on the right side of your screen. We did run into similar challenges as the people in Jacksonville. NHTSA, getting NHTSA waivers and permits was a was a big issue, and we had to work together, provide the necessary reports to make sure we got the waivers. This was the first, as I mentioned, where we tested the interoperability and connected autonomous shuttle. All of these shuttles at the time were from Europe, and they were ADA compliant for Europe. They were not ADA compliant for US. So there was a lot of retrofitting that had to be done. Ridership, this shuttle happened to be during those COVID years. Ridership was an issue, and people were concerned about riding close to another person. Technical issues, batteries, sensors, when it comes to different types of weathers and environments. Speed was a major issue in the early years of these shuttles. And, if you looked at Angie's slides, those shuttles are, supposed to operate at anywhere between 35 to 40 miles per hour now. This was not the case back then. These were going at like 10, 12, 15 miles per hour at the most. In terms of what we did in research, we did like before and after, or pre and post exposure surveys. All the graphs that you see down below, the left half is the before and the right half is the post exposure. A lot of the people who are concerned about riding in these shuttles, once they took a ride, they were much more comfortable. The big pink line that you see with the riding are all the people who became much more familiar and more comfortable with riding in a shuttle. Same with the people who walk and bike. They were concerned how they would cross in front of the shuttle, or ride their bicycle next to a shuttle. Once they started doing that around the shuttle, they became more comfortable as well. The only set of people who did not like it were the drivers because of the speed of the shuttle. And if you're stuck behind a shuttle, especially on a one-lane road, that would not create happy drivers, as one might imagine. We also did open-ended questions, and we tried to do some word clouds to understand what some of the major issues were from their end. This was just asking them. What we did was we saw like how it would reflect in their actual behavior when it comes to these things. So we went to Lake Nona. So if you're not familiar, it's a small town closer to Orlando. This was the place where Beep first started their operations. So we went ahead and we worked with Beep and the community there to actually put some cameras out there and observe the actual behavior. And just as we looked at the Gainesville data of what people were saying in the survey, their behavior was very much similar to what they said. So the driver who was stuck behind those slower autonomous shuttle, they would start making aggressive passing maneuvers. People at the crosswalk, they would be tentative as to how they would cross. And then people who are making the left turns, they would not know whether the shuttle will wait for them, and vice versa. People who are going straight, they would not know how to react to a shuttle which would make a left turn, as you can see in all the pictures on your right side. Now we also are doing some additional work. We are using the videos from those shuttles and trying to get an idea of how the people following the shuttle would behave. So we extracted the trajectories using those videos. And now we are doing some modeling work in terms of the relationship between the autonomous vehicles themselves and also the human-driven vehicles around those autonomous vehicles. So these were some of the works. And in the more recent times, last year, we were commissioned by Florida Department of Transportation to look at what has happened since those early age pilots to more advanced, more broad projects nowadays. So we looked at more than 50 projects in the U.S. and more than 40 projects in the European Union, and tried to understand what is the new generation of autonomous transit across the world. In addition to looking at those reports and literature, we identified about 9 different experts from both public and private entities, and we interviewed each of them and asked them, what do you think are the promising aspects, and what are the key challenges for for autonomous transit to exist and thrive. Uh, you know, as one might expect, some of the promising aspects, identified by the experts were, improvement in safety, greater accessibility, last mile and first mile connectivity, and lower operating costs. And challenges they identified were like, some of the technical operational limitations when it comes to those turns and, working with poor signages or roads and, working with limited connectivity. Funding constraints, regulatory issues, as we still don't have standardized regulatory framework in various states and in the nation. Um, in addition to that, combining what we learned through those interviews and what we learned by looking at all those uh, 80 plus projects across the world, we kind of summarized in 5 different topics what the lessons that we learned from those projects. Technologically speaking, how do we integrate sensors? How do we utilize AI to what is the more efficient way of communicating, to what should be available at an infrastructure level, how the urban design should be more adaptable, and then how you establish those stakeholder partnerships, to public acceptance. From not we were not the only ones who did the public acceptance survey, right? So there are studies in, for example, in Scotland, for example, in Ohio, where there were similar surveys and focus groups done with the people as to how to achieve that public acceptance, how to build that trust. From a regulatory framework, what are the current regulations across various states, what are needed going forward, and how would autonomous transit fit into the bigger picture of transit and other modes of transportation, whether it's micromobility or microtransit, how those modes supplement or complement the autonomous transit. So those are some of the things that we documented and learned in that report. And I'm happy to discuss more on that during the panel discussion. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Prithvi. I'm looking forward to seeing that report. But it does show, I liked all the dots. There's been a lot of pilots, more than I had imagined. So I wanted to ask Carol to come on. She's an international expert on the ITS world and very, very active in the ITS World Congresses on public transportation and urban mobility in general. And I know she has a specific and special interest in accessibility issues. So Carol, why don't you take it away?
All right, thanks, Brendan. And thanks to both Prithvi and Angie, because some of the things you mentioned are things that are sort of in my thoughts all the time about ensuring that automated vehicles are accessible to everyone, whether it's someone who's able-bodied, someone with a disability, or an elderly person. We need to make sure that these vehicles are accessible to everyone. So I'm going to run through these slides relatively quickly, but I wanted to step back for 1 minute because one of the promises of automated vehicles, even before we talk about using them in public transport services, people have always said, well, this will be much better for the disability community, for people who don't have their own vehicles, because you'd be using them in a shared environment like public transit is now. But I think we kind of jumped a little bit ahead of ourselves with the advent of automated vehicles. And we need to kind of just step back a ways to say, how do we make these vehicles accessible to everyone? And there are three things that I always think about from an equity perspective in public transit, and that is when we've designed technologies for public transit, we have often overlooked some of the very important factors about culture, gender, physical ability, access to technology. And we need to be thinking about that as we're bringing these vehicles to the public to use in public transit service. Also, I've asked this question for years and I'm still asking it. How exactly do we measure how well we have done making these vehicles accessible to everyone? We need to talk about what are the appropriate metrics to do that, for example. And finally, it is an issue about data. So obviously, as these vehicles are operating, we're collecting a lot of data and we're using a lot of data to improve the use of these vehicles in public transit service. But we do need to be concerned about any kind of societal or ethical issues with the data. Where is the data being stored? We need to make sure about privacy. When we talk about public transit use by persons with disabilities, we need to think about things like HIPAA, for example. So FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, did a study a couple of years ago looking at where are we with accessibility in automated vehicles for public transit. And I'm not going to read through the whole table. I think you'll all be able to access these slides later. But there were three major areas of concern where work is still going on to make these vehicles accessible to everyone. One is boarding and alighting. And the best example of that, if someone is in a wheelchair, for example, how do they board the vehicle and how are they secured when they're on the vehicle? That second area is securement. Typically, we have a driver in a public transit vehicle who is securing the wheelchair or the individual that might have some kind of mobility aid. And then wayfinding and communication technologies is a very important part of having automated vehicles in public transit service. And we need to see, there are a lot of technologies that are being tested, but what are the best ones to provide accessibility to everyone? So one of the areas that this study and some other studies looked at was, how do we make sure these vehicles are accessible? We need to have things like precision docking. If there's no one on the vehicle, we need to make sure that the vehicle is in a position where people can board. Do we have any technology for securement? And is there any way for people on board the vehicle to communicate with operations if there's no human being, no driver or driver assistant? Also, and Angie mentioned it in her presentation, and I'm really glad you brought it up. A lot of these vehicles have been developed over a period of years, but many of them did not use techniques to bring people with disabilities or seniors or, frankly, able-bodied people to the table when the vehicle was being designed. So now we're doing that, but we didn't do that a lot before. So we need that sort of collaboration. FTA felt, and both Prithvi and Angie mentioned, that some of these vehicles are still in prototype stages. So that's an issue. We do have an issue about whether we still need onboard staff to assist the passengers. Also, there, as Angie pointed out, a wide variety of these vehicles. One vehicle type that we haven't seen any photos yet is of a rather large automated vehicle that would be like your typical 40 or 32-foot transit bus, for example. So some of these newer vehicles require some tailoring to use them in public transit service. And I had also talked a little bit about the data. So let me get through this. So FTA did this study a couple of years ago. The European Commission funded a study to look at making these automated vehicles accessible to everyone and running them in public transit service. And you can see on this slide, they focused on three areas. And both the prior speakers mentioned this. There needs to be significant partnerships with the developers of the vehicles, the technologies in the vehicles, the agencies that are going to be operating these in public transit service. And right now, there is somewhat of a lack of, and I think Prithvi mentioned it, of regulatory frameworks that exist. as to how these vehicles are going to be operated. So the Europeans took a very close look at all of these issues. And I do have a slide with resources so you can take a look at their results. The final part of my presentation is pretty straightforward. So Angie mentioned some challenges, Prithvi mentioned some challenges. I also want to do that to kind of set the stage again for how we move forward in the future. We need to recognize that typically disadvantaged groups are not always asked to come to the table to provide their input regarding these automated vehicles. And we need to go out of our way to make sure that that their voices are being heard. And another challenge is when you talk about acceptance of automated vehicles, you may be getting into a smaller vehicle with other people you don't know. You do that now if you take public transit. When I get on a bus, I don't know who else is going to be there, but we need to be sensitive to the way people feel about security. Economic displacement is a discussion about, do you have anyone on board helping the passengers? And are you actually replacing the human on board, or is the human going to be on board to take care of some of the tasks that maybe can't be fully automated? How do we operate these vehicles in a rural environment, which is much more challenging than an urban environment? How do we deal with environmental justice? And two other quick things here on my list is the digital divide. If we're looking at these vehicles being accessible to everyone, do we assume, for example, that if this service is on demand, that they have access to a smartphone and a smartphone app to call for the vehicle? We can't make that assumption. So we need to address, how do we do this for people who don't have access to technology? And then one of my favorite things to discuss is, how do we change our urban planning models to account for the use of automated vehicles in transit service? And finally, on the opportunities side, there's a lot of phenomenal opportunities here for us. One is that we greatly improve shared mobility. People don't have to have their own vehicles, and we can look at this the way we currently look at public transit that is not using automation. But point number two here, it's part of a greater transportation ecosystem with other modes. And we need to be sensitive as to how we integrate this kind of service with other modes like bicycling or rail service. We need to provide access in rural and suburban areas. We need to be concerned about how sustainable these systems are, which right now we don't know a lot about what they're going to cost in the future. Again, we need to involve the community in the development of the systems and the vehicles. We need to look at the most recent technological adaptations, like being able to secure a wheelchair without a human being on board. And then we're really running these systems based on the data that we've collected and data that we're using for operations. So you'll have access to these slides, but I would urge you to take a look at these two reports to delve much further into how we make these systems accessible to everyone. So thank you.
Thanks, Carol. Boy, a lot of food for thought from all three of you. Chad's given me the green light to go a little bit beyond our the time that was allocated because there are lots of questions. But I want to start off with a very practical question. That's as much as I've been looking at these things, I see what you know about this is basically all the pilots to date have had safety drivers. And so that facilitates lots of things, but there's a lot of thinking about, oh, all the opportunities really come later on with caveats that all of you have raised. But I've wanted to know, how does, I mean, it's clear a customer on board can request a stop by just pushing a, request stop button, and now a computer will pull up to the next stop and open the doors or deploy the ramp or whatever. How does the vehicle recognize if there is no driver or attendant? How does it recognize that somebody's waiting at the stop to get on? And I was just curious does anybody have a thought about that? Prithvi or Angie?
We have, I think it would be really great if everybody could come to Jacksonville and see the work that we're doing. To answer your question, first off, the way that public transportation works is that they're a designated station and the vehicle will stop at every designated station. However, we went one above, and that for public transportation, we are held to Title VI and ADA compliance. So at the stations, there are cameras and monitors and Braille in 2 languages, where if there is someone that comes up that needs assistance, they can press a call button and be connected directly to a person, not a answering service, but directly to someone in the call center. Either that person can help or they can advise that someone needs to be dispatched to one of the stations. If I may, in reference to securing individuals when we go to no safety attendant or ambassador, a company named Q Strength we are working with, and they're pretty close to getting a locking mechanism that can lock without the intervention of a person. On the new hold-on vehicles, we are looking at employing those Q Strength devices that are self-locking. And then in reference to the boarding and the lighting, we've worked with Braun Mobility and Roush to install lifts that stop when the vehicle stops at a specific boarding and a lighting area, which is designated within every station. The individual can board and alight safely on a wheelchair. So there's a lot of new technology out there. Communication within the vehicle. There are cameras on the outside of the vehicle. There are cameras on the inside of the vehicles, and there are cameras along the entire corridor as well as the station, where the analytics of the cameras now can tell you if somebody is in distress or they can press a button and communicate directly with the control room while in the vehicle. So there's a plethora of new devices, and I'll stop there because I can go on with.
Great, Angie. Go,
I had,
Carol,
Yeah.
did you want to say
yeah,
something first and then
just
Prithvi?
Yes.
just very quickly, is in that urban environment, as Angie said, there's so many technologies that can really assist people that need assistance. When we start using these vehicles in an on-demand service, we're going to have probably a few more challenges, like the question you're asking, Brendan. How do you know, is someone asking for the vehicle to stop with an app or something like that? But I think once we move these vehicles into on-demand service, we probably have a few more things that we need to be thinking about.
Yeah.
That's it.
And Prithvi,
Yeah. I just wanted to add something. Angie gave a lot of great information. So last year we were commissioned by the Florida Senate. Senate actually passed a bill asking us to look at how technology is being implemented in paratransit services in Florida. So we took a look at that, and we made some recommendations, and we also explored and we talked to folks like Qstraint, where they're bringing up that automatic restraint system. So those are all the great points. So I think the third point you made, Carol, was on the wayfinding. So one of the things is, a lot of the apps the transit companies have now, there's not much thought being given into how accessible those apps are. So we also recommended a framework using the existing guidelines called Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So those are a worldwide standard for both web and mobile app design. So yeah, so I think that is something that should be considered going forward, and rest of the things I think Angie covered very well. Yeah.
I want to add one other thing, if I
Go
can,
ahead.
Carol. The one thing I wanted to do when I was designing the station was to do best in class station design for people with disabilities. So we have the Braille, and that's what led to the cameras there. But the other thing that I'm most proud of, we have the Jacksonville Transportation Advisory Council, which is a group of disabled individuals that come to JTA and give us advice and feedback about our system. Just this week, we had 2 focus groups working now with Hold to make sure that there are some considerations for their needs that they can identify. So they have been around the vehicle, given input as well as first responders. So
that's
There's
perfect.
a question that came from the audience, which follows up a little bit what one of the things Carol said. If it is based on, well, especially in a demand responsive mode, if it's based on reservation using a mobile technology, there's still digital divide issues. And in the rural environment, there may not be internet service. So I think there are some new challenges that may come, like you said, Carol.
Yeah, one example, and this is not an automated vehicle, in the area that I live, which is suburban, the town that I live in is testing out an on-demand service that operates within the town and just a little bit outside of it. A number of seniors are using it to get to shopping appointments or whatever, and they're not smartphone savvy. So there always is a regular dial-up telephone. I know that sounds like ancient history for people who don't have the app or they can't use the app, so they can contact operations and still get a ride. And we just need to remember that we need those fallback things still so that we can address this kind of an issue?
A different question about the vehicles. Angie, it makes a lot of sense what you adopted because of, a lot of these pilot vehicles are one-offs, and they've had exemptions to be able to do a research project, basically, but they don't meet NHTSA or other standards. Has the regulatory environment evolved? I mean, because here they're both state level ones and federal level ones. And before you can really start having vehicles without steering wheels and so forth, we're a long way away from that, it seems. But I don't know. Where are things standing in the regulatory sort of environment? Angie, you're muted.
So right now, to nicely, Florida is in the forefront of regulatory changes, or even looking at the regulations around safety features for autonomous vehicles. Autonomous vehicles still fall under the Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard. There has not been a new definition or new standard for autonomous vehicles. So that field, hint, hint, is wide open for for those who want to have a hand in how that legislation comes about. The way that we have done it is that we have started with a federal motor vehicle safety certified vehicle, i.e. the Ford Pro, and do a retrofit where therefore you don't need a NHTSA waiver. However, the beauty about Holon is a subsidiary of Benteler. Benteler is a major automotive part supplier in the United States. So Benteler now has taken on the onus of creating a vehicle without steering wheels that will be deployed in 2027.
Prithvi, any other comments?
I'll just add to that. So when we were doing that literature review survey, we looked at all the 50 states and their state laws. So, and we wanted to look at whether they even define what an operational design domain is, what are the liability and insurance requirements, what are the safety regulations, what are the human operator requirements. So we looked at that, and we only found out like about 7 states actually define these things in some limited fashion. Those were Florida, Nevada, New York, California, Arizona, Michigan, and Texas. Beyond these 7 states, rest of the states, these terms are either not defined at all or very loosely defined without much definition. So that's what our experience was.
So there's a little bit of a path to follow.
Yes.
I want to maybe the last question on customer acceptance. Now, Prithvi, you mentioned that, and that once people are in it, they're more accepting. I guess there's 2 sub questions. One is I've understand there is some differences between different demographics about this. So that's one question. And the second one has to do with the people outside of the vehicle, not inside the vehicle. And I've heard the same thing about frustration behind a slow moving vehicle. That was a major issue in a Japanese experiment. And I've also heard about pranking, where people do stuff just to force the vehicle to jerk and stop and stuff like that. Any thoughts about how? Well, start with the last one and then go to the more positive one.
So in terms of the speed, I think that is getting, fixed now. I think most of that was mostly due to the computational power and the sensors, and that has improved quite a bit. And the new generation of vehicles, as you saw, they're more towards those 35 to 40 miles per hour, which is much more acceptable than the previous generations. So going back to your first question, which was, public acceptance. It's always been easy with people who are inside the vehicle than the outside. And when it comes to different generations, we actually when I was at UF, we did experiments with the older adults, considering we are in Florida. So with the older adults, our colleagues at occupational therapy, they actually made them experience autonomy in a simulated environment, and then they took them to the actual autonomous vehicle and they made them take that, and they did the cross design where some people did the real shuttle first and some people did the simulation first. Across the board, we actually saw that there was a substantial increase in perception of safety and comfort among the older adults, sometimes even better than like people who are younger. So we do see that uh, the public acceptance is definitely much more easier when it comes to having them use the shuttle versus interact with interact with them. When it comes to pedestrians and bicyclists, though, there have been some experiments done where there's communication of intent, right? So how would a person know whether the shuttle is stopping for them when they're trying to get across the crosswalk, right? So there are some places where they have had displayed boards, right? Like the shuttle has a display board which says, the shuttle is stopping or shuttle is waiting and so on. So I think that there's a scope for that to be improved even more, where you can make the lives of those bicyclists and pedestrians more easier.
Yeah, sounds good. Carol, any other thoughts or?
Just very quickly, there was a European project several years ago called Fabulous. Don't ask me what the letters stand for because I can't remember right off the top of my head, but it was using automated vehicles in transit service in about 5 different cities in Europe. And a couple of them were not major urban areas. They were suburban or rural. And they did a significant amount of surveying and analysis about, what did passengers think? Did they accept this? Did they trust the technology? And it's very similar to what Prithvi was just saying, that they're actually the percentages of people who felt comfortable in an automated vehicle that was actually operating in regular fixed route transit service, that the numbers were above 80% in terms of trusting the vehicle, feeling that they were safe in the vehicle. There were other questions as part of that whole project, but I think we still have a ways to go. And the best thing was what Angie mentioned about having specific, whether it's a disability group or another consumer group, working directly with the agencies that are deploying these technologies to be able to gain trust. But the one overall thing is, if you ask someone who's never been on one of those vehicles how they would feel, they have no idea.
Yeah. Okay. Chad's telling we're coming up to a hard stop, but Angie, I'll give you the last word to wrap up the session. And you're muted. Sorry.
For me, AVs are here to stay. And I try to make sure that people kind of it's going to be a paradigm shift. And I use this analogy There was a time when people drove with a horse and buggy, and then somebody named Ford decided to invent this extraordinary thing called a Ford Edsel. And then all of a sudden people said, oh, no, 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 my horse knows exactly where it's going. I'm not going to ride that thing. Stop, it's crazy. There are no safety procedures. Here we are again today with autonomous vehicles. And we just have to help people shift that thought process in that. And I asked, would you now go back to a horse and buggy? And the answer is no. So we just have to learn how to harness and safely use the technology and move forward.
Great, it's been great discussion. So thank you, Angie Williams. Thank you, Prithvi Manjunatha, and thank you, Carol Schweiger. And I'll pass it over to Chad to wrap up.
Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Prithvi. Thank you, Angie. Really appreciate your time today. Really appreciate the time that the steering committee spent in finding the helping us find the speakers and reaching out. Thanks to all of the Caltrans employees that worked on the graphics. Thank you for all of the panelists, for all of the moderators. Thank you, everyone that contributed in some way. And of course, thanks you to the viewers. We really appreciate your taking the time out of your busy schedule to watch this symposium and to participate, to share it with your friends. Very much, I'm grateful for that. And I hope that you have a fantastic year. We hope to bring, further events like this in the future. So again, thank you very much. We really appreciate it, and we will see you next time. Take care, everybody.